Islam, Islam, Islam. We want to welcome you to another Egyptian Adeptus Research Ultimate class, sponsored by the Moorish American government. Today's platform will be provided by the God Allah Georgia Consulate. I am Dr. Torre Anu Rasul, National Assistant Grand Chairman of Moorish America in the God Allah Georgia Territory. We also give honors to our host instructor, Dr. Shadua Menti Al-Muhajjid Shepshuel, our National Assistant Grand Chairman of Moorish America, Islam. And at this time, who's checking in? Islam.
National Grand Secretary. Oh, go ahead, Moore.
No, guys. You go ahead. I can see you. Go ahead.
Gratitude. National Grand Secretary of State, Dr. Hatshepsut Tutankhamun Bey and Tribe.
Islam. Islam and greetings and grand risings. Islam, goddess and queen, to you and the tribe of endurance. Dr. Marvin Edwards Bey, Consul General, Texas Territory. Islam, sir.
Islam, sir. Gratitude. Honored to be here with you, Morris.
Islam.
Islam.
Islam. Let's see here. Would you let's see here. Would you like to open up the way with the Commission Adept Moorish American prayer? Are you stationary? If not, if I got it.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Islam. Oh, well, look, I'm going to do this right here. Boom. I'm going to put it up there like that.
Oh, that's beautiful. Appreciate it. Eliminate anything, any kind of doubt or whatever. You know what I mean? That's it. Appreciate
Islam, it. We know we do our best to make it plain. Islam.
Oh, absolutely. You do a great job at that, brother.
Hey, so do you, brother. And grand assistance last night at the Moorish perspective. Islam, Mighty Moore.
Islam. Yes, sir. I try to always be available.
Man, look here. Ain't nothing like it.
Yes, sir.
Nothing like it. Islam. Yeah.
Islam.
Well, let's see here. We got let me see. We have okay, just us three for right now. All right, then we'll be starting shortly, family. Islam.
Islam.
Oh yeah, that's right here.
Yeah, I know that.
All right, gratitude. Islam. Now, Sister Grand Sheik, Islam. Can you hear me, Mighty Moore? Peace and blessings to you. Islam.
Peace and blessings. Islam.
Islam isn't. We got one more minute, family, before we open up the way. Islam, Dr. Dendra Neil Curta Bay. How you be, goddess and queen?
Islam, I'm just as Moorish as ever. How are you?
Yeah, just as Moorish as ever. Peace and blessings to you and the tribe, goddess and queen. Glad to see it on the manifest.
Islam.
Islam. Well, at this time, Moorish King, we're definitely going to open up the way. Well, we're going to open up, Dr. Marvin Edwards Bey is going to open up with our Commission Adept Moorish American prayer, followed by myself with the recitation of our Divine Constitution of Moorish America and the chapter of the week, chapter 24. The host who explains to Casper the meaning of silence and the wisdom of Allah and man. Dr. Marvin Edwards Bey, the floor is yours, grand man. Islam.
Islam. Ya Allah abnuharu makul naturu. Ya Allah Abheru. Ya Allah Ma'atru. Ya Allah Uteperu. Ya Allah Heru. Ya Allah Mahekuti. Ya Allah Awjet Dejuti. Ya Allah Pertam Huset. Sutek Pertam Haru. Ya Allah Bamaduti. El Hejisri up to Ali. Amen. Alias. 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 Transliteration. O Allah, the Father of the universe. O Allah, the Father of love. O Allah, the Spirit of truth. O Allah, the Spirit of peace. O Allah, the Spirit of freedom. O Allah, the Spirit of justice. O Allah, you are my protector. O Allah, you are my guide. O Allah, you are my salvation by night and by day. O Allah, through your holy prophet. O Allah, Drew Ali. Amen. Holy Issa. Holy Issa. Holy Issa. Islam?
Islam, Islam, Islam. Gratitude, Grand Man, for the opening up the way with our Commission Adept Moorish American prayer. Islam, Islam, Moorish America. Salvation, our God, unity. The divine Constitution of Moorish America. Islam, Act 1. The Grand Sheikh and the Chairman of Moorish America are empowered to make law and enforce laws with the assistance of the Prophet and the Grand Body of Moorish America. The Assistant Grand Sheikh is to assist the Grand Sheikh in all affairs if he lives according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and it is known before the citizens of Moorish America. The Bylaws, Act 2. All meetings are to be opened and closed promptly according to the Circle 7 and love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Friday is our holy day of rest because on a Friday, the first man was formed in flesh, and on a Friday, the first man departed out of flesh and ascended into his Father God Allah. For that cause, Friday is the holy day for all Muslims all over the world. Act 3. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice must be proclaimed and practiced by all citizens of Moorish America. No citizen is to put in danger or accuse falsely his brother or sister on any occasion at all that may harm his brother or sister because Allah's love. Act 4. All citizens must preserve these holy and divine laws, and all citizens must obey the laws of the government, because by being a Moorish American, you are a part and parcel of the said government and must live the life accordingly. Act 5. No organization of Moorish America is to cause any confusion or to overthrow the laws and constitution of the said government, but to obey hereby. Act 6. With us, all citizens must proclaim their nationality, and we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may know that they are a part and a parcel of this said government, and know that they are not Negroes, colored folk, Black people, or Ethiopians, because these names were given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now, and all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained Noble Drew Ali, the prophet, to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites, whom inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. Act 7. All citizens must promptly attend their meetings and become a part and a parcel of all uplifting acts of Moorish America. Moorish Americans must pay their dues and keep in line with all necessities of Moorish America, and then you are entitled to the name of faithful. Husband, you must support your wife and children. Wife, you must obey your husband and take care of your children and look after the duties of your household. Sons and daughters must obey father and mother and be industrious and become a part of the uplifting of fallen humanity. All Moorish Americans must keep their hearts and minds pure with love and their bodies clean with water. This divine covenant is from your holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali, through the guidance of his Father God Allah. Prophet Noble Drew Ali, peace and blessings be upon him, founding father and framer of the divine constitution and bylaws of Moorish America. And now that this meeting has been opened according to Act 2 and love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, we say Islam, Islam, Islamism. And at this time, we're going to come forward with our chapter of the week, chapter 24. Yehoshua explains to Casper the meaning of silence and the wisdom of Allah and man. Islam, all one. Now in the early morning, Yehoshua came again to teach and heal, a light not comprehended, shone about as though some mighty spirit overshadowed him. And a Magnus noted this and asked him privately to tell from whence his wisdom came and what the meaning of the light. And Yehoshua said, there is a silence where the soul may meet its God Allah. And there the fount of wisdom is, and all who enter are immersed in light and filled with wisdom, love, and power. The Magnus said, tell me about this silence and this light, that I may go and there abide. And Yehoshua said, the silence is not circumscribed. It is not a place closed in with walls or rocky steeps, nor guarded by the swords of men. Men carry with them all the time the secret place where they meet Allah. It matters not where men abide, on mountaintop, in the deep vale, in the marts of trade, or in a quiet home. They may at one time fling wide the door of the soul and find the house of Allah. It is within the soul. One may not be so much disturbed by noise of business and the words and thoughts of men if he goes all alone into the valley or the mountain pass. And when life's heavy load is pressing hard, it is far better to go out and seek a place to pray and meditate. The silence is the kingdom of the soul, which is not seen by human eyes. When in silence, phantom forms may flit before the mind, but they are all subservient to the will. The master, soul, may speak, and they are gone. If you would find this silence of the soul, you must yourself prepare the way. None but the pure in heart may enter here. And you must lay aside all fears and doubts and troubled thoughts. Your human will must be absorbed by love divine. Then you will come into consciousness. You will come into a consciousness of the holy breath. You are within a holy place, and you will see upon a living shrine the candle of Allah flame. And when you see it burning there, look deep within the temple of your brain. You will see it all aglow. And every part from head to foot are candles all in place, just waiting to be lighted by the flaming torch of love. And when you see the candles all aflame, just look and you will see the eyes of soul, the waters of the fount of wisdom rushing on. And you may drink and there abide. And then the curtains part. And you are where the ark of Allah rests, whose covering is the mercy seat. Fear not to lift the sacred board. The tables of the law are in the ark concealed. Take them and read them well, for they contain all the precepts that man will ever need. And in the ark, the magic wand, for they contain all prophecy, lies waiting for hands. It is the key to all the hidden meanings of the present, future, and past. The cherubim have guarded well for every soul this treasure box, and whosoever will may enter in and find his own. Now Casper heard the Hebrew master speak, and he explained, behold, the wisdom of Allah has come to men. And Yehoshua went his way, and in the sacred grove of Cyrus, where the multitudes were met, he taught and healed the sick. Islam, Islam, Islam. Well, Moorish America, at this time, we've heard the recitation of our Commissioned Adept Moorish American Prayer, our Divine Constitution of Moorish America, and the chapter of the week, chapter 24. Yehoshua explains to Casper the meaning of silence and the wisdom of Allah and man. And at this time, we're going to call forth our host instructor for the Egyptian Adeptus Research Sultanate class, Dr. Shadu Alamenti Al-Muhajjid Shabshuel, National Assistant Grand Sheikh of Moorish America. Islam, the floor is yours, Grand Man.
Islam, Islam, Islamism. Let us rise upon the seventh and give all praises to the great God Allah, Father God Allah, and honors to his holy prophet. Honors to our holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali, El-Hajj Sharif Abdul Ali, that is. We give honors to our Moorish kin once again, here, there, and everywhere, and therefore honors to all of you who are continuously honoring yourselves by being yourselves. We give honors to our Grand National Seal. We give honors to our Grand National Emblem, National Flag, Divine Constitution, and bylaws, and honors to all of you who are indeed a living manifestation and personification of everything, and I do mean everything, that our holy prophet brought to make us a nation. I want to welcome our Moorish kin once again to another Egyptian Adeptus Research Sultanate session. And it's a grand draw in Moorish kin. We have come a long way, so to speak, you know, in regards to dealing with these different measures that have manifested, you know, and we still have some unfolding to do. There's still much wisdom to be learned by the Moors. And this is a grand drawing that we can grow and unfold and continue to elevate, you know, and evolve, you know, when it comes to coming into a state of consciousness of the work that we are called to do and what it is that we represent as a people, because it was our holy prophet who told us, you know, what to do when we get the pen in our hand, and we are doing exactly that. You know, so we give honors to the Moors who have stayed, you know, upon the course. You know, we give honors to the Moors who have not wavered, because it is these Moors that will actually basically see the benefit of everything that was brought to the manifest, those who have stayed here and stayed the course the whole way. So we give honors to you, Moors, for you are indeed the faithful. You have indeed proven, you know, to the great God Allah, you know, and he himself has declared the proof of your messiahship, so to speak, when it comes to the endurance aspect, you know, all the way to the end. The prophet told us to be part and parcel of all uplifting acts. And this is one of those uplifting acts that will lead to the uplifting of fallen humanity and uplifting of our people. You know, when it comes to these special measures, there are no shortcuts to the truth, you know, because anytime we take shortcuts, we lose sense of the actual manifestation of the journey, you know, that we have to take basically along the way. You know, so the key is for all of you that have stayed the course, you are indeed most definitely adept. And our Moorish kin can most definitely learn from our family. I'm talking about for those who would now want to learn the concept of dealing with the Arabic language. The Moors can get it directly from those who are adept that are here within these classes. The same, it has to do with those who would like to learn the Coptic from a Moorish perspective. They can get it from our family that is here, as far as giving them a foundation to do their own research. You know, that's why we call our prophet Professor Drew, the Egyptian adept, because the work of a professor is to give one a drawing, and it is for those individuals to go and do the research based upon that. Also dealing with the Demotic script, our family is able to bring these things forward, you know, and they will in due time. It will be these who come forth to actually compile, you know, our dictionary, you see, and you can only compile that having a base knowledge of everything that we just spoke of. You know, these will be the ones that's qualified, you know, to come forth and demonstrate this. Also, when you deal with the hieratic, you know, the hieratic script that we just went through. We went through 7 sessions of the hieratic script, just as we did 7 sessions of the Demotic. So these lessons are all available for the public to go and see. And we've been able to move accordingly. So again, Moors, we give honors to you, and you will most definitely be rewarded, you know, for staying the course. Islamism. What we want to do, as always, we want to actually open up the way by reading from the Book of Fire. And we want some of our Moorish kin to volunteer to read from the Book of Fire. And this is actually dealing with page 321. And we're going to go up to actually, we'll go up to 325. So do we have any Moors that would like to come forth and volunteer in the reading?
Islam?
Dr. Marvin Edwards Bay, where you can start from 321 and then you can actually go up to 322 and you will stop above be conscious of biblical beginnings. Islam?
Islam.
Islam. All right, one more. Actually two more, but Islam.
Islam.
Islam, Grand National Secretary of the State. And you can start from 322, be conscious of biblical beginnings. And you can take us over to, that would actually be the bottom of page 323, which is after the beginning corn became the word of God. Islam?
Islam, gratitude.
Gratitude, Islamism. All right. And is there any other more that would like to come? Islam. All right, Brother Bati Bey. You can start from the top of page 24 and take us up to page 326, where we dealing with above the making of the first God, Ish and Isha. You can stop above that at independence or prosperity. Islam? So, all right, Islam, Moors. Well, I'm a Badu. We may proceed. Islamism.
Islam family. I am Dr. Marvin Edwards Bay, Consul General of the Texas Consulate, rising, giving all praise to the great God Allah, giving highest honors to his prophet, our prophet, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, Al-Hajj Sharif Abdullah Ali, giving high honors to our theocratic government, our Moorish American government, giving high honors to our Act 1. I give high honors to all of our officials. I give high honors to this class, our ears class, as well as I give honors to Dr. Shadu Aminti Abu Haji Shepsuel, our National Assistant Grand Sheikh, our host and instructor of our ears class, as well as I give honors to the Georgia Consulate for providing the format, the platform for having this class. I give honors to all those that aided in bringing forth our class this morning and opening up the way. And I give honor to everything that's Moorish, our flag, our seal, our emblem, our divine constitution, our holy Quran, our book of Ali, our 101, 102s, our exhuming of a nation, all of our divine revelations I give honor. I give honor to the forerunner, Dr. Marcus Mose Garvey, L. I give honor to our ancestors whose shoulders we stand upon. And I'll begin. Adam and Eve, an ancient Kemetic Moorish history. The illustrious prophet Noble Drew Ali was the first Moorish American patriot to teach the lost found descendants of Africans the truth about Adam and Eve. He said, they are the mothers and fathers of the human family, Asiatics and Muslims. Although the entire family began in Africa, the majority of their true history has been secretly kept from their children in the Americas. A whitewashed European version of Adam and Eve has been force-fed through Christianity to these African children during the subjugation of the mother continent. Until the advent of the Holy Prophet, the Western world saw the first human family on earth through spectacles that had been prescribed with falsehoods, myths, and hypocrisy. Through these European designer glasses, the modern world saw only a pale-skinned Adam and Eve, whom lived in a mystical garden of Eden. This Eden had an exclusive for white folks only sign at the entrance. Also, in the Black psychic, this Eden was propagated to be in the well-off white folks settlement, and with the exception of being infested Yeah, and with the exception of being infested with a talking snake, was believed to be the only heaven a good Negro could possibly, perhaps, maybe pray to reach in the sweet by and by after they die. To this day, most religious circles accept this dark age story as the word of God. Since slaves are bred to have short memories, most ex-slaves habitually still serve the God of their former slave masters. This God could not be perceived nor defined beyond the realms of the very church that ordained the denationalization and enslavement of African worshippers. When Drew Ali first brought the true history of Africans to the Moorish, they became awed at the infinite, universal, and deific depth. To this day, of all the millions of Negro churches in the United States, which count with countless Bible thumpers, there is not one so-called African Christian with full relationship knowledge to the true origin of Adam and Eve. The story of Adam and Eve is actually the original verbal historical account of the first civilized people of Africa. It is the truth of their divine origin, fall, and attainment to perfection, being told by wise men to all initiates. The glory of this first man and woman represents the complete cycle of the great God and man. This cycle of life was called Emmanuel by the ancient Israelites. The holy story of Adam and Eve is the divine essence of a chartered course that all men must ultimately follow. There is no escape from the fixed destiny endured in the historical infinity of the story of Adam and Eve. Without the pure knowledge of one's derivation, any person armed only with human knowledge will face the instability of their karmic present while awaiting an obscured future. Without the true knowledge of Adam and Eve, carnal man will believe he lives in the make-believe life that is trapped between a birth and death. In this chapter, the required do-or-die light will, pardon itself, the required do-or-die light of Adam and Eve will be revealed. How the esoteric history of Adam and Eve has been used to lessen gods into humans and reduce humans to Negroes. The deliberate burial of the true value of the first family on earth will lay bare the dark aging of a people. The state of ignorance about Adam and Eve has also been used directly to secure the institution of slavery in the Western Hemisphere. This state severed the paternal roots of nearly 500 million African nationals, detaching them from the human family with the marks of Negro, blacks, colored people, NBC. Every nation that claims attachment to the human family has had their Adam and Eve. Now, has had their Adam and their Eve. The Bible is full of Adams and Eves. However, most of them are shrouded under the terms begot or begotten. In fact, Adam and Eve genealogy of Yehoshua the Christ through his father Joseph and Mary and mother Mary in the books of Matthew 1 through 16 and Luke 3, 22 through 38 are sound examples of how serious African nationals truly are about their divine origin. Adam is the founding father of the human family of nations and its first patriot. Other more renowned Adams are the great Ham and his lineage of Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. Also, there is undeniable father divine of many nations, Abraham, with his sons Ishmael and Isaac. All of these are Adams of great nations, civilizations, and religions. The latter sons actually subdivided the first religious creed, the ancient Kemetian mystery system, into Judaism and Islam. See chapter 18. Most Americans can now relate to George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Quincy Adams, etc., as being the founding fathers of the United States of America. By divine design, they are the indisputable atoms of the USA. However, today's problem with the same Americans is they have very little understanding when it comes to their ex-slaves being a clean and pure nation with their own atom. Hence, the purpose of our subtitle, The Exhuming of a Nation, to the biography of Noble Drew Ali. Indeed, also by divine design, as revealed in this biography, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali is the return of Adam. By this design, he is the first patriot and indisputable founding father of the lost-found tribe of Ali, the new Moorish American nation. It does not take the research ability of a master historian to realize the existence, absence, and exhuming of this cornerstone of the human family, and that only Noble Drew Ali, having been born among them, proclaimed this nation as his by their one divine name and number. Drew Ali states, all Adam and Eve are the mothers and fathers, yet they are one. Hence, the honoring of one's father and mother became one of man's first obligations and source of strength. The so-called Negro and other NBC people are the only people on earth today without mother or father from which to honor. Matthew 15, 1 through 14. High parental honor has been a covenant among African nations since their fall into humanity. It is more holistic in cultures than modern-day religious concepts and rests on every civilized family's origin, genealogy, and heritage. Drew Ali also taught the Moorish Americans that they are olive-skinned Asiatics, angels, and have the same Adam and Eve, father and mother, as those who guard the holy city. See Genesis 3:24 and question number 57 to 63. He educated the Moors to the fact that they are the direct children of Adam and Eve. This may seem somewhat acceptable as common knowledge by those in this age of cyberspace and optic centers. However, in 1913, most American Negroes actually had been trained to believe their present idea of Yehoshua, God, his mother, Mary, were all pale-skinned and the opposite of themselves. To say the least, to them, God's first man and woman of the Bible had to be ever so white. As far as the good Christian colored people were concerned, the first white family of God in their home, a Garden of Eden, was a delicious and evasive slice of pie in the sky after you die. Surely, this garden was where all white folks and a few good Negroes went to if they were blessed. Prior to the advent of this angel of Allah, question number 41, the Moorish of North America were miseducated into a dark age of Christianized, Darwinized, and denationalized pseudo-life. As unconscious Negroes, Blacks, and colored people in BC, they were deceived into believing Adam and Eve were two Europeans in a God's mystical paradise. It is also natural for a few NBC and some self-proclaimed white folks to defend 2,000 years of deception with the modern Christian statement, it doesn't matter what the color of Adam and Eve, we are all children of God. Even a crash dummy will reply with, since the skin color of God, Adam and Eve, was not important, then why was it biblically taken away and replaced with pale skin? This bitter bit of history is of a people's mentality. Pardon self. This bitter bit of a people's mental status should be well remembered as we now ultimately endeavor into Adam and Eve as originally told by the ancient ones. But first, let's uncover some more of this 2,000-year-old hoax. Adam and Eve has been mostly told by thieves. No oppressor, slave master, or otherwise ruling government has ever written the accurate history of his or her captives. The Babylonians, Kemetians, Romans, Islamic rulers, and Euro-Christian governments, etc., all have slanted the history of their victims to reflect themselves as superior saviors and of the wretched of the earth. Let me say that again, Morris. Naturally, they were all merely doing their God. Well, I'm gonna go ahead. They were all merely doing their God's will to subjugate and annihilate the inferior enemies in order to save them from themselves. Such history will reflect the victors as having saved the wretched from an assumed inevitable doom. The Grecian Romans interpreted writings of the Israelites' history are by far a prime example to support this reoccurring fact. It turns out, according to prophetic destiny, the pale-skinned nations of Europe are today's controlling world rulers, straddling the current cusp between the Piscean and Aquarian ages. Naturally, their great book, which tells his story of the conquered people of African descent, is the foremost propagated and most read book in recorded history, the Bible. The Bible, by far the greatest book of collected African history to be written by Europeans, oddly enough, was not written by Africans and is not the infamous Word of God. No, God did not write the Bible. Greeks from Europe wrote the first draft of the Bible, and it was called the Septuagint. See religious finale. Noble Drew Ali said, "You can't control how another man writes your Moorish history, but when you get the pen in your hand, write your own, tell the truth, and sign your name on it." The ancient Kemetians, having enslaved the tribes of Israel, misnomered them collectively as Hebrews. This was a very degrading label and not the free national names of the people. This renaming or labeling one's chattel is not a new phenomenon. Historically, slave masters have never addressed their slaves by their free names. Slaves, as with all properties, are given slave names. This is because they are a conquered people and classified by their rulers as inferior and less than a first-class citizen or lower. This is substantiated, this is standard procedure based upon the strength that no slave can ever be greater than his or her master. In these modern days, history has repeated itself with the renaming of the West African Moors into Negroes, blacks, and colored people, NBC. And like the so-called Hebrews, after generations of being called names other than their own, the branded slave labels became accepted as normal. Once any living thing began responding to the summons or callings outside the purity of its own natural freedom, it has been domesticated. Indeed, with the slave world of Hebrews and blacks, some would rather die trying to be what they are not than to live being free, being themselves. See 13th, 14th Amendment, 13th and 14th Amendment. Still, as soon as Moses freed his tribesmen from the Pharaoh's oppression and they got on their feet, these freshly freed nations slandered their former slave masters as Egyptians. The derogatory label Egyptian replaced the true name Kemetian gods of the Nile in all the Hebrew communications and publications. And so it remained until this day. Similarly, in this era, the European rulers call the descendants of Amexem or Kubalan Negroes, colored, and blacks. As the so-called blacks were free to read and write, they called their slave master white. And the beat goes on, and the revolving doors of Maya continue going to and fro. The Israelites, Hebrews, Yehoshua, etc., of 2,000 years ago did not write the Bible, a history book about themselves and their verbal account of their creation and fall of man. In fact, the Torah was over 1,000 years old when the Greeks wrote the Bible. The Torah contains Israel's story in their divine accuracy. So there was really no need for another book of their accounts. Ergo, since the Israelites through which Yehoshua was born had no use for a book written by their oppressors about them, then who did? Obviously, the authors, whether they milked a council of 70 rabbis to get it or not, it was still written for the benefit of the Greeks, Romans, and subsequent nations of Europe. See chapter 18, Islam.
Islam, Islam, Islam. This is Dr. Hatshepsut Common Bay, National Grand Secretary of State. First of all, I want to rise, giving all praises to our Father God Allah, giving honor to our Prophet, Noble Dura Ali, the last prophet in these days and times, giving honor to our ears class, giving honor to our Georgia consulate for providing the forum, and to all of our Moorish kin that open up the way. Be conscious of biblical beginnings. To this day, most do not know they have been lied to by those who wrote the word of God in their Koine (street) Greek language. The biblical Adam and Eve saga was among the first literature the slaves were allowed (or force-fed) to read, and it was greatly enforced with barbaric dosages of the fear of (white man) God by European rulers and slave masters alike. This was the sole purpose for Freemasonry, the Reconstruction Amendments, and the Ku Klux Klan. Their establishments were to save these black sinning heathens from their own wretchedness and for the unconscious institutions of slavery's new world order. Albeit since the Greeks' biblical version is the only version of Adam and Eve known to so-called blacks, then let's sojourn there and see what they look like in the light. But bear in mind the divine origin of the original Hebrew laws of Moses began in the Egyptian mystery system. And the basic European translation of these biblio teachings evolved into a middleman religion of events, which quite candidly he brewed up. Also, remember, now as the Moorish Americans began to write their own history, had it not been for Noble Drew Ali's revealing these great truths of the divine origin of African nations, the Western world would not be forced to concede to over 2,000 years of fabricated religious dogma with their quote unquote information highways and cyberspace intelligence. The true story of Adam and Eve is all about the divine creation and heritage of the original African people. They were not only the first man to people the planet Earth, but their will was emerged with the will of their father God. Durali placed this in the science of Asiatics and Muslims, the mothers and fathers of the human family. Question number 57. Here it would be good to note, a Muslim is anyone who submits his or her will entirely to the will of the great God. Hence, Adam and Eve were Muslims before they became Asiatics and human. During the millenniums of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and into the world called Asia, there were no Europeans made. The hueless ones of the Netherlands were not even a thought. But now, today's pale-skinned nations have had the privilege of governing the earthland and telling his story. All of a sudden, they are the foremost authority on the original, quote unquote, first family, Adam and Eve. Surely this is parallel only to a bastard given the apocalypse of great-grandparents or hearing fish stories being told by date trees, or Mutt telling the history of his pedigree, or the green monkey that fathered AIDS. Speaking of monkeys, how is it an entire people who proudly proclaims to evolve from primates know the true history about the human family? Was it not these same people who pillaged the prophetic and oral history from the Hebrew tribes in the first place? Not only that, but as unconscious Moors try to paint themselves black into a biblical history, little do they notice it is the pale-skinned nations of Europe themselves who denounce all claims to the biblical human family. This paganistic practice of making God in the image and likeness of man is a gratified weakness amongst the nations of the earth. In these modern times, the nations of Europe named themselves white, then made Yehoshua in their image and called him God. Domesticated African slaves being forbidden first-rate entry into quote unquote white Freemasonry and quote unquote white Christianity were allowed to make their own versions of these institutions in the quiet of their slave quarters. Today, there are various NBC fraternal orders and Christian denominations fully equipped with their own versions of the Bible, complete with Black Yehoshuas and surrounding characters in their image and likeness. Oh, the horrors of fallen humanity. Can all this be blamed on the rabbit hormones of Mr. and Mrs. Monkey? The biblical story of Adam and Eve, as told by many religions of the cross, originated from Moses and various Hebrew slave tribes of Africa. Most of these tribal stories lost their spiritual significance in the translations from African origins to European carnal comprehension. What was later reported to the world, diluted and spiritually deprived versions of Greek interpretations of the creation and fall of man. These diverted rays of the truth were not the real thing, but have predominantly hatched the modern West. Not to speak radical against the church, but it seems to me anyone who teaches man cannot be perfected and then give the great God a mama named Mary should know eventually they would have to face the truth sought by inquiring minds. How do the Greeks fit into biblical history? Turning to the centuries surrounding the life of Yehoshua, parentheses BC through AD, history reveals the Romans and Greeks were governing Palestine, question number 28. In fact, Greek was made the national language, although the indigenous, like Yehoshua, continued to speak Aramaic. 2 Kings chapter 18, verse 26, Ezra chapter 4, verse 7, the tongue of their forefathers. This is similar to English being made the national language of the United States, although the surviving Canaanite tribes, parentheses Indians, continue to speak Athabascan and other indigenous dialects. True history will also reflect the Greeks thought all languages other than Greek sounded like blah, blah, ho hum, de blah, and considered all non-Greeks barbarians. There are two levels to the Greek language: classical, correct or proper Greek, and Koine. Koine Greek is the everyday common street language with standard colloquial trash-talking expressions and general ad-libbing Greek. After the beginning, Koine became the word of God. You guessed it, the Septuagint, first translation of the Bible, was translated entirely in Koine Greek. Naturally, since the Greeks and Romans give themselves the title of God, question number 92, and wrote their Bibles in Greek and Latin, it is not strange for today's Black Christians, etc., to defend their master's book as the Word of God. To most of them, the only God they have ever known is the same masters which wrote the Bible and then used the same book to justify the ma'afa of African enslavement. Actually, the origin of the Word of God began as the words of the ancient pharaohs and simply means voice of the ruler of the land. Question number 93. People, namely so-called Negroes, who refer to the Bible as being the Word of God, are in fact giving praises to the words of the Greeks. And through various paganistic forms that are pleasing to themselves, make Europeans, parentheses white men, their God. This does not mean there are no truths in the Bible, quite the contrary. What this means is the Bible is not and was not ever the word of God, but the words of the Greeks. It does not matter how much the Negro, Black, and colored pastors hawk, sweat, and spit in the name of Jesus. The letter J, pale-skinned God, and all came from the Greeks and was traumatized into the slaves by their European brothers. Islam?
Islam is Dr. Bati Bey. With our territory, first I'd like to rise and give all manner of praise to Allah, honors to the Prophet, honors to our theocratic government, our royal council, our flag, seal, emblem, our divine constitution, our swift angels, Mufti, citizens alike, honors to all the Moors that spoke before me, all the ones that will speak after, and honors to the Georgia consulate and our and Dr. Ashadu Aminti Mohadi Shabazil for this class, and all those who had a hand in bringing about this class. It must be remembered in the minds of the Greeks, they were the only gods. As a people, they could not fathom a divine origin, and subsequently could not perceive a God greater than themselves, unless it was an African God-man, whom they call Yehoshua to this very day. No European nations ever knew or worshiped the great God. As Drew Ali wrote, man's highest ideal is his God. The Greeks at their greatest were not powerful enough to completely hide the holy light of Africa that was centralized in ancient Kemet, Egypt. Nevertheless, once the truth has been confounded, it is no longer pure and can do more harm than healing. Where the Greeks and the Europeans have fallen short on African comprehension is for anyone to know the spirit, they must be the spirit. The Greeks, neither Romans nor any of their pale-skinned invaders of the Holy Lands, never fully understood the spiritual foundation of Hebrew, Aramaic, sister language to Arabic, nor any of the other 200 languages of Akabulan. Akabulan means mother of mankind, or Garden of Eden. It is in the descendant language Swahili of the ancient Kushites. Akabulan is the indigenous name given to the continent, later misnomer Africa, by the Romans. Her first true and divine name is Amexem, which means land of the holy gods, or land of the holy people. More Holy Quran 46:3. The reason for this lack of transliteration is not because Africans were the primitive monkey-built pagans as portrayed by virtually every European Bible pusher since Constantine, 280 to 337 AD. It is simply because they could not understand the boundless spirit realm. They could not measure what they could not see with their carnal eyes. The world of hallowed covenants, holistic cultures, and the line uniting divinity and matter is incomprehensible to those unable to see inward, see the third eye. This was the foremost lesson of the Adamites to learn. Whenever European rulers fail to understand the infinite and the timeless, they will either try to destroy or distort the subsequent manifest. These thoughts draw strength from the bowels of envy, lust, and hatred. It is in the nature of hatred to be short-sighted, a slave to time, and fearful of anything it does not create. Therefore, the foundation of the Bible rests upon the great conspiracy. It was the amalgamation between the Sanhedrin, beginning of the Caiaphas, and the government of the European rule to nationalize the Jewish religion under the Roman government. The world's greatest cover-up since Adam tried to hide from his maker had begun. Rome's subjugation of Israel's religion is rooted in their feigned crucified death and resurrection of Rabboni Yehoshua. Those Jews who would not conform to the government's version of Judaism was later called Christians, not because they were pious like Yehoshua the Christ, but because the title Christian distinguished the rebellious Jews from those willing to compromise under the Roman yoke and law. Yes, the first Christians were Jews, This is why Yehoshua warned John to beware of those who call themselves Jews and are not. Revelations 2:9. Today, this Roman assumable jurisdiction of civil customs is reenacted in the United States takeover of the prohibition and the lottery numbers game, etc. Remember, selling liquor and running numbers were crimes of felony when acted by America's common people, but a government control of a poor people's pleasure was legalized by the use of one word, license. A license is a document of authorization to practice that would otherwise be illegal. Blackstall Dictionary. Oppression can do strange and often unimaginable things to the human mind. Weak-minded Jews became Christians the same way pork-free and African Muslims have become pork-feet-eating Negro Christians of USA today. The powerful effects of oppression have never been truly measured on the minds of the US slaves. The Bible, with its Hebrew Greek version of Adam and Eve, was siphoned from the Israelites during their state of iron hand oppression. The Greeks recognized the Kemetian Egyptian influence in the Mosaic laws because Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and Hippocrates, etc., had all received their former education in the Egyptian mystery system, not to mention the notorious Alexander the Greek. The reader should also remember Moses, being raised as an Egyptian aristocrat, received the foremost teachings of its ancient adept mystery system. These teachings also included perfections of the God self with the powers of the dominion over all other living things created by the seven eyes of Allah, the Elohim. This is why the Pharaoh's heart appeared hardened. Pharaoh's not impressed with the exploits by one of the other former students, who they viewed now as a traitor for taking the secrets into the forbidden lands of the north. Yehoshua, the prophet, also received the lessons Sunam Bunam in the Egyptian temple feature. Sutanothni means man know thyself. See religious finale. The books of Moses, collectively called the Torah, translated from the Hebrew language containing no vowels into Greek, lost a word of spiritual definition in the very first draft of the Bible's Old Testament. The Greek version of the Holy Bible, called the Septuagint, the Greek word for 70. 70 is also the Egyptian number for brotherhood. The Septuagint acquired its title from the council of 70 rabbis that convened to translate the Torah into low-class Greek language. All subsequent Bibles trickled down from this one. The Roman Catholic Latin, the infamous King James Version, spurned more than 3,000 variations, edited, revised, and fraternal. Word of God. Did I mention the Holy Quran of the ancient Bhagavad Gita has never been changed? This history is pertinent to Adam and Eve because most of the westernized world is only aware of the biblical version. Yet the Bible was never written by a single prophet, as are other sacred tablets. This is because every major prophet always leaves a holy book of guidance for their special people. And while most Christian scholars are drenched in a maze of unresolved questions about Adam, Eve, Cain, the flood, Moses, the missing 18 years of Yehoshua's life, etc., etc. Rarely does anyone question who titled the Bible holy in the first place, or who said it is the word of God. Another master question is, since there is no difference between the great God and his name, who is the God that wrote the Holy Bible? Truth is, the era of Moses was about 1300 BC. The oldest Hebrew story in the Bible only dates back to as little less than 4000 BC. Good gracious. There are pyramids and mounds older than these Hebrew stories. The ancient Safarian Moabites had circumnavigated the entire continent of Mexico by 8000 BC. There were many African civilizations that gave birth to the tribes of Israel, collectively known as Hebrews. In fact, it is not strange that Adam's son Cain already knew his wife, although they were in Nod, east of Eden. Genesis 4:16 to 17. The entire story of Adam and Eve marks the two greatest civilizations. The first was during the founding of Atlantis, Lemuria, and Mu. This one was because the catastrophic earthquake, which is often confused with a 40-day biblical monsoon called the flood. When Moses led the tribes of Egypt east into the promised land. Did I mention that Moabites were already using Moab and Amorites were busy in Ammon, and there were some Canaanites still in Canaan? In other words, the promised land was already being occupied by natives of that era. And accurate history would also reflect that the promised land was another lawful province of the ancient Kemetic Egypt. During this time, the only gods of the civilized world were the pharaohs, who were the rulers of the earthland. They were not too pleased with those who called themselves Jews squatting on their land across the sea. It seems the descendants of those self-proclaimed Jews of that era would be repeating the same exodus 3,300 years later in the 1948 Western backed proclamation of Islamic occupied lands. Case in point, the biblical Hebrew stories are not the true origin of the human family. These stories are mostly abstract versions of the divine creation, fall, and perfection of man. These histories of the world were learned by enslaved people, Hebrews, while under Kemetic rule and mystery system. The world's first religious creed, Islamism, by slaves never being greater than their masters, they really understand the origin of or nature of their master's creed. Anyway, the original Hebrews and Moses, the original Hebrews with Moses, Egyptian teachings did not believe that God or man had beginnings, nor did they believe that the spirit man could die, not as long as the great God lived. The Egyptians had taught Moses that man is a perfect being. This is why the great Torah in its original Hebrew text is by far more accurate than today's infamous word of God. But only a few NBC people dig back far enough to the origin of a given matter. The truth of the creation of fallen man states, time never was when man was not. If life of man at any time began, time will come when they would end. Or show the Quran, chapter 1. In contrast to this immutable truth, the Greek's Holy Bible gave God the creation and man's various time slots with the Bible's infamous opening alpha passage of in the beginning, Genesis 1:1. In the beginning is the Greek misinterpretation of the Hebrew oral history and became the first of today's once upon a time. Introduction to some Western stories. Only one kind of person would equate the infinite absolute with the finite duration called the man-made people. American Negro Blacks have not figured out one major problem. Have not figured out one major problem. With all the religious and political world rulers and evangelistic preaching about love for humanity, why is it that none of the major religion teaching them the truth of who they are? But then again, the problem itself has been a secret till now. Now, with some of the biblical discrepancies and the other Greek-Roman slants to the original man aforementioned, let us now remind ourselves of Africa's Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve, as documentation is the ancient Kemetian and Moabite record of the spirit man's descent into human form and conscious liberation back to the all of his God state again. For those Black African Americans, especially stuck in the stupor of disbelief and never questioned what God, Greek, is the Bible truly the word of God. They need to review one historical revelation. The modern world is nearly 86% populated by people of olive skin. There are Bibles in all of them. every Islamic country. Yet how many nations and tribes of African descent, all people of here, own and rule their indigenous lands without European intervention? But the Bible and its trademark cross are in these places. And who is the economic and more often than not political, social, and religious ruler of the land? How much has truly changed since the era of Brother Yehoshua? See Illuminati. So what does this have to do with Adam and Eve? Value, just plain value. Security is what gives a thing value. An accurate, unbiased, and truthful history of any place, person, and time is what gives it value. Security is a manifest of purity, cleanliness, and truth. To see Adam-ish and Eve-ish in their God state as the original God, as original man, chosen to be made from the soils of Eden in Maxim Akabalan, Africa, then as the first humans to walk the earth is to know their true history. The true history of Adam and Eve is so infinitely valuable to the Moorish. These were the children of Adam-ish and Eve-ish because they honored them as their divine link to the Creator. As long as Moorish nations remember their sacred origin, they could not be mentally enslaved. This is why it took the nations of Europe under the Roman Catholic Christian Crusades 2,000 years to break the minds of the Moors and whitewash away Adam and Eve from their memories. In fact, without speaking radical, the Bible is the chief agitator of the whitewashing machine of Adam and Eve. This is the reason they, the prophets and Yehoshua, appear suddenly pale-skinned in the final rents of the colored churches of today's Vatican subsidies. The value of a divine history. Hardly any so-called Negroes, colored folks, or Black people read Issa, and Isha into what they were, gods in the garden. Today, they cannot fathom their ancient foreparents as being the gods that walked the earth. Even fewer know they were sun-kissed with melanin embodied with flesh from the holy, rich ground of Africa. Less have siphoned the reason why the Holy Lands are in Africa is because it gave birth to the holy people. Tragically, even smaller amounts accept the value of knowing Adam and Eve are the mothers and fathers of the human family, Asiatic and Muslims. See appendix, question 57. But then again, some have been miseducated via a primate evolution. Truth is, because they are not a free nation of people, today's NBCs is by far more trained than educated. This formula is verified by the fact only property can be trained while education belongs to citizens of free national governments. Hence, Negroes and Blacks being property names that identify those persons detached from the human family and not having father or mother can only be trained at best. Since the NBCs does not have a divine history, they can be trained like domestic beasts to be professors, judges, generals, and congressmen, etc. for any master's government and social benefit. In the end, no property can accrue national prestige, wealth, independence, or prosperity. Islam, Islam, Islam. I'd like to turn this meeting back over to Ashedu, Aminti Amohadi Shabazz, Il, Islam.
Islamism, grand man. We give honors to all of our Moorish kin who came forth. It's important that we get them drawings that our chairman put out there because they give us the context under which we are able to identify with how these things occurred along the line of dealing with the remix. And this is a powerful drawing, Moorish kin. We have been able to trace ourselves back in regards to dealing with the language. Our Moorish kin is able to actually deal with, transliteration and everything. Man, these Moors is y'all Moors are great, you know, when it comes to that measure there, man. We have done a lot together in so small of a time. And I can't wait till we begin to compile our own dictionaries and so forth and so on. That way, we ain't got to worry about nobody questioning us. But why are you using this dictionary? Because, you know, people just like to do certain things to be facetious, so to speak. You know, our people anyway. You know, they will pull that card when it benefit them, basically. You know, while at the same time pushing a Eurocentric doctrine. So make it make sense. So what we are going to do, you know, we are going to revisit a measure and go through a recap, you know, briefly, but we are coming up the pace because we want to touch on the real meaning behind what the hieroglyphics, you know, represent, what they entail. You know, that's what they like to call them. You know, Medu is the proper way of saying it. Medu means the language of God, you know, according to, you know, most translations. And being that this is the case, if God speaks a language to man, we know it's not the language similar to that of our tongues, but it has to do with more of being able to listen to the silent voice that speak within. How do we know this? Because that's what it entails when it comes to our lessons. You know, not only does our Moorish Holy Quran tell us this, but the Grand Quran tell us this. You know, even the Piscean records tell you that God basically speaks to man through man. God speaks to man through signs and symbols within the creation. And that's why we say signs and symbols of a conscious mind and men of understanding. So having this in mind, this tells us exactly what Medu is. This tells us exactly, you know, what the special language of God is. Even in the Grand Quran, it talks about the language of God, makes a grand emphasis on that. This is just a powerful drawing. I want to go back because this is the most, we'll say, extensive expression of all that we have brought to the manifest. You know, this is the most extensive aspect of what we brought to the manifest. Let me see here. I want to share my screen first. We actually going back to one of the first documents we have when we're dealing with the language. I actually added certain measures in here. You know, when we were talking about basically the language of the people and the origin of the languages. This is what I actually added, you know, beside this measure. As you can see, this is known as the, you know, expression of the emerald tablets of Tahuti. Why this is very important, family, because we talked about being able to see the oneness of the language prior to, you know, language being scattered abroad and people becoming separated. And we even went back to the proof of the Tower of Babel, right? And we seen the similarity between this special language and that language that is known today as Phoenician, and then some people like to call it Greek. And we can see here, it is even called Iberian. There's a relation and connection to this language as it relates to the Iberian aspect. And they give you different variations of how the letters change throughout time. But we can see the Egyptian connection to this. So most definitely we can see, this is key. When you say Iberian and Egyptian, the key to this is knowing that if we are dealing with, for example, the emerald tablets of Tahuti, we're going to get to the hieroglyphics of Medu in a minute. This just has to be brought forth. If we are dealing with this particular language, you know, in that expression, you know, and it's Egyptian and you have Iberian, you know, they change in variations, turn letters different ways, but nevertheless, it's still the same alphabet across the board when you look at it. Iberian, as we know, refers to the Iberian Peninsula. This is the area where the Rakat structure is. You know, this is the area where Atlantis has been found. And we say that in fact, we say that in fact, family, that this is where the language actually begins, you know, birthing. And it's not strange because Tehuti in his emerald tablets, being that he is said to be the civilizer of ancient Kemet, what they are calling Iberian is really Atlantean, you see? And so from that special area, coming from the West, because they had, in the history we understand ones migrated out of Canaan and went all the way into the West Coast. Atlantean civilization was built there. You know, there's some connections as well when we deal with the Lemurian civilization as well, but we're mainly dealing with this connection to this language. We haven't seen a Lemurian alphabet per se. You know, I can go into the Senzar and all that right there and make some connections, but that's not necessary right now. You know, my main measure is trying to show our family something. And you can look here and you can see pretty much that this emerald tablet, a lot of these letters, you can find them in this area, you know, dealing with between what is called Iberian, Egyptian, they have Tartessan and so forth and so on. This alphabet is the most universal alphabet, you know, that we call that one language before there was a separation, you see, because from Tehuti, if he went into Kemet and he had his tablets, and surely he took this language, and then we see how this became the birth of the Egyptian. See, now this is a different alphabet even from what we know of as hieratic and demotic as well. But you never really hear people talk about these types of things. The key to this particular alphabet here is we're going to find that there's a link between most alphabets and these alphabets here. Here's another expression over here. And I'm trying to hold it down and keep going. I'm going to have to hold it with my hand. You see they have, again, Egyptico, Tartesso, which is Tartessan again, and Iberico. And they have Minoico and Phoenicio. You know, these particular expressions are still dealing with the same type of script. You see? Now, being now that we have made a connection between what we would call the Atlantean or the Iberian and the Egyptian, and we can see that this alphabet also has a grand connection within the scheme of dealing with the languages. Let us go here. We see in what is called the YDS Sabah. And you know, the word Sabah also goes back to Sabian and so forth and so on. If you look at the alphabet in the script here, you can see the relation to this and what we just showed you. This is actually inscribed in stone. You can barely see it there faintly, but we're going to show you a better view of this. See, that's quite different from the demotic and the hieratic. But this goes back to dealing with that same script that we were just referring to. You see, there's a connection between this and the other scripts. Here's a better expression of it here. Check this out. Morris, let me make that smaller so you can really see. This is actually inscribed on Egyptian monuments. So we can see, you know, how this script began to become evolved over time, so to speak. But we see the same thing that looks similar to what is on the emerald tablets of Tehuti. And this is on Egyptian monuments, right? Here's another drawing, and this is actually called Phoenician, but this is the same language. So we see in the same language that's called Phoenician, that's called Egyptian, called Iberic, you know, which I refer to as Atlantis, you know, Atlantean script. You know, this is special measure is, again, in Egypt. You ain't hear a lot of Egyptologists talking about this or speaking on this. You getting exclusive information here in relation to dealing with certain things. All of these are Sabian scripts. Look at the style of the Sabian script. Same language that's being depicted up here. You know, that's being depicted up here. Similar alphabet, script, and root. Whether they change it in different, this is actually, you know, a tablet that's written in the same thing. It's so old, it's almost like it's chipped away a little bit, but it's definitely coming up out of Kemet, as you can see right here. You know, the goddess, and you see the god man offering something to her. But this is the same thing right here being depicted in this particular tablet as well. So these are Sabian Kushite inscriptions, you know, that were found in prehistoric Arabia. You know, these are also, in most cases, they talk about what they call the Tannic script or the Punic script or the Carthaginian script, you know, as well. You know, this script was found all the way across from basically Northeast Africa all the way to the Northwest coast of Africa, right? That's just the same thing that was posted above in regards to dealing with the emerald tablets we went into. So now, all of that leads up to this special point here. Let me go right here. When we come here, because we want to make it plain as to how the European also came up with the concept of trying to push what they pushed as an alphabet. They actually got the concept from this language that's known as Proto-Sinaitic Proto-Canaanite. This is where E. Wallace Budge and a couple of more of them came up with that concept that the hieroglyphics was an alphabet. They were really basing that off of the Proto-Sinaitic Proto-Canaanite script. That's what this is, which to somebody that don't know no better, they'll look at it and say, well, that's hieroglyphics. This is the original Hebrew language before they came up with the box Hebrew you now find today. This is the Paleo-Hebrew alphabet that correspond to each one of these symbols. Now note this particular language is the same as the ones I just showed you on the Egyptian monuments above. Even in some of the sources, it actually referred to it as like a Semitic connection in Kemet, you see, but we know that the Semitic aspect came later. It didn't come before that which was set out in ancient Kemet. So yes, so each one of these symbols actually correspond with these letters. This was the base alphabet that all of the ancients was drawing off of. And so they created this from symbols that they seen while being in Kemet. The proof of this is actually found in Isaiah chapter 19, when it spoke and it said 5 nations will speak the language of Canaan. You see, this is the language that they was demonstrating at that particular time. You know, Proto-Sinaitic, Proto-Canaanite, some people say ancient Moabite, so forth and so on. Pay attention to the alphabet, the Paleo-Hebrew, as they call it, right? This is the same as what was called Phoenician up there, the same as what we showed as Iberian up there, the same as what was called Egyptian up there. So this is the universal language again, where we had the separation dealing with the Tower of Babel. This was the base language that we find. And then different nations began to create their own alphabetical system, their own writing systems. You see, and this is where your hieratic, you know, begin to evolve, your demotic and so forth and so on. These were systems and scripts that were specifically brought forth by that people. You know, when you deal with Paleo-Hebrew, they pretty much stuck with the original script that we showed you above, you know, which is really, this Paleo-Hebrew is really Phoenician before it was Paleo-Hebrew. And they'll tell you that. And you can see it actually right here. You see, and notice they have them right beside the hieratic here. Even though we've seen the Egyptian alphabet that's basically the same as this, the ancient Phoenician, you know, they have here, then they have all the letters that are the same as what we just showed you in Paleo-Hebrew. See, they have Old Hebrew here. They got Old Hebrew inscriptions here, and they taking different letters in here and there. But you can see the actual language over here in that Paleo-Hebrew alphabet is the exact same as this ancient Phoenician alphabet right here, minus doubt or contradiction. You see? Now, again, these alphabets, you know, correspond with each one of these. Notice they are showing the equivalent between the hieratic letters in this letter and all of the other letters and so forth and so on. So when you come here, again, the Europeans seeing this, Allen Gardenia, you know, and a couple of more of them, they seeing this, they say, okay, well, they were writing like this in Proto-Sinaitic, Proto-Canaanite, so that had to be an alphabet when you go into the Egyptian, which we proved that wasn't the case for the Moors that have been here. We proved that there were more hieratic papyri on the manifest than there is this so-called hieroglyphic that was created on top of the hieratic. We proved that already. We don't even have to go there. Our Moorish kin already know this, right? But again, they took from these expressions, these symbols here, and the way that alphabet was, and applied that and made it applicable to the hieroglyphics. And that's how they came up with the concept of saying that this is hieroglyphics. See, you have Kemetic here, and they have Semitic here, right? They got Phoenician here. They got Greek there. You can see the evolution of the language and so forth and so on, all the way into what they call so-called Greek and Roman and all of this stuff. But we already know what they call in Koine Greek, you know, as our chairman was speaking of it, was really Phoenician. We know that as well. So you can't pull that over us anymore. You can't even say Paleo-Hebrew really, because Paleo-Hebrew was Phoenician as well. You see, according to that mention. It was also Iberian or Atlantean and Egyptian as well. You see, that's the connection we're making with the actual alphabetical measure here. So then you have the Semitic and the Kemetic in comparison to each other. Now look at what they have here. The ox head, you see? Then you have the concept of what they like to call the house in their field of determinatives. And you see the letter they compare to it. So they are comparing Kemetic letters to Semitic letters. You see, this is exactly what I'm talking about when I said that they went about this a special way in creating the hieroglyphics. Because of course, if you take these symbols and apply them to an alphabetical structure, and then you connect that to the hieratic, you know what I mean? Then you basically just created your own Egyptian expression, you know, that didn't have nothing to do with what the ancients was teaching. You know, this is the way they chose to bring it forth. So all of this is going to lead us up into dealing with the real concept and the purpose of hieroglyphics. But we just letting you know exactly what was done in order for them to create this. We're going to show it to you in a minute. I want to show you a few more drawings here. Okay, so you see here, for example, again, now we know this is our abjad order, the only Egyptian chart we was able to find in abjad order. We know these here are nothing more than what we call markers. You know, we have proven this as well in our hieratic lessons. You see they have the actual hieratic on the side of it, So we don't even have to go over that. But notice they have the so-called aspects of what they call Phoenician, you know, the Phoenician here. Then they went into square Hebrew. This is what you modern day see. This is what a lot of Hebrews will tell you is Masoretic, you know, and it ain't got nothing to do with the actual text of the Hebrew script, but you do try to compare these letters to what is called Paleo Hebrew or what is called Phoenician. You know, so connecting these things like this, it's easy to see how, you know, they were able to twist the truth. You often hear me say, because a lot of people like to say there are no vowels in the original language. You're right. In most texts, when they were translated, there are no vowels, but we always tell our family that the vowels came from the Meroitic script. You know, the A-E-I-O-U demonstration is right here. The first few letters of Meroitic, you know, is the vowels. So these vowels were also taken from our people as well. You know, the European began to adopt it later. So follow me here. Again, remember, we were talking about the Proto-Canaanite, Proto-Sinaitic. You see they have the same, you know, scheme of the letter order brought forth. You know, we see the Abjad demonstration here, even though they're missing the B. The B is basically there. That's Beth. That's the house. Notice they have South Arabia. They got Ethiopian. You know, these languages evolved out of the same alphabets. See the Proto-Canaanite here again? This is Proto-Canaanite in pictorial script. This is Proto-Canaanite in the alphabet script that I just showed you, which again goes all the way back to the Atlantean or the Egyptian. You know, this is that same thing known as Phoenician. We see it here. So this is compared to this. You see? And that's how, again, the Europeans were able to try to come up with their concept of all this other stuff. See Aramaic here? You see the same alphabet here. They show you variations of how this thing goes, where they turn letters upside down, sideways. This is what they call in ancient Greek, but we see it was already there in the Phoenician. You know, and the same thing, we can see the same alphabet as it goes through Phoenician and what they want to call the Hebrew and so forth and so on. It's still the same thing. So we can see truly, you know, here the story of the Tower of Babel being very true in terms of there being one language at one time. And then a separation took place. You know, like I say, this is a recap over certain things. Now that we have in-depth knowledge, it will now give us a grand drawing, you know, of exactly where we are along the way. So all other alphabets evolved, and people took from these scripts and created their own different measures. You know, you got your Sabian script, your Hebrew script, your Arabic, your Latinite script, Talmudic, of the people of Talmud. You can see the connection in the way these things are all written. They all are similar to what was said out. See Punic? The Punic script is the language of the Puttites, the language of the Carthaginians as well. Look at it. Same thing. We can't make this stuff up, family. You see, that's Iberic again, Libyan, you know. We see how people begin to evolve their languages. And last but not least, this is the last chart. Notice they have the box Hebrew or the Masoretic Hebrew here. You see, and then you see again the Moabite script, same language. This Moabite script is the same language, family, you know, again, as what we just had been showing, you know, and it goes all the way into the language of Malta and Greece, Carthage, Thugga, which is actually an area in the Moroccan region as well. They got Constantine right here. Don't know what that is. That's Neo-Punic. But again, all of this is being grouped under Phoenician. So all of these different people were drawing off that same alphabet. We're gonna go back up here again. And like I said, you can see. Okay, there we go. you can see again that the script was indeed written. Yeah, the same scripts was written here. It's important that we know that. And this is where, again, they was able to compare these letters in regards to dealing with the concept of what they came up with. Dealing with these particular pictures here. And that's why they begin to try to express the hieroglyphics in the same way that Proto-Sinaitic and Proto-Canaanite is. Now, to go beyond, you know, the thought of what one may be thinking that this is just some speculative demonstration, I'm gonna show you. Can you see my screen changing, Morris, Ken?
Not yet.
Okay, let me change it. It's still on the PD, yeah, you're right.
It's on the that script, yeah. I mean,
okay.
letter, alphabets.
Okay.
Alphabet. Okay. I can't see what the name of it is. I know it's.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm finna open up this other. I'm gonna open up my whole screen now. And I wanna go here. This is just a brief document right here that has some things relevant to this. And I'm gonna let you see what was actually stated in a portion of this particular document here. There are many of them out here. I actually have a whole Proto-Sinaitic, Proto-Canaanite dictionary too in my archives. But okay, you see this? You see it now, brother?
Oh, yes, sir. Revisiting the encoding of Proto-Sinaitic in Unicode?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so we are using this as a reference document, you know, again, to show our people, again, how pictorial script came to be known, you know, as hieroglyphics. And we're going to get into the real essence of dealing with hieroglyphics in a minute. We just wanted to put this out here. There's a portion in here that I want to read to you. See how they have all this here. This is Sarabat El Kadim. That's known as the area of Mount Sinai. Same region where Moses ended up getting his tablets, they say. And I showed you pictures of Sarabat El Kadim. It's still tablets over there right now in stone. That's basically all over the place, on the ground, laid down. And, you know, again, this was nothing more than those Canaanites who had adopted and created a script during their stay in ancient Kemet. That's basically what they did. They created it from the symbols that they seen. So again, this is how the European was able to come up with the concept of the hieroglyphics. So all these relics, they come from there. The Proto-Sinaitic inscriptions, they come from there. Here's a grand example on what I'm talking about when they compared these things to the letters. See, they talking about early Northwest Semitic. We just showed you that alphabet. You know, they even went into early South Semitic, you know, but nevertheless, you can see how they have them compared to the pictures. See, the Abjad order is here, right, as well. You see, in comparison to the alphabet and then this pictorial demonstration that was created during that time. Now, you can see they definitely kept this in Abjad order. That Abjad is universal. We already know that. Just shows us that this their language structure was rooted in the language of the original inhabitants of the land. You know, this was just the way it was during that time. This is what I was looking for here. And I actually had this measure dealing with Alan Gardenia's sign list, but I want you to hear what he says here about these measures. Listen to what he says. He says, part in the Egyptian expeditions, these indications, however, must be admitted. It says, not to amount to very much. Before proceeding further, one important point must be emphasized. It is to the last degree improbable that the monuments bearing the new script are the work of the indigenous Semitic nomads who have eked out a bare existence in Sinaitic Peninsula. It says since time immemorial. Now he's basically speculating that, it's improbable that these monuments that bear this new script is the work of the indigenous Semitic. You see, he's automatically trying to link this to somebody else other than them, which we know he's trying to do it in regards to linking it to the ancient Kemites because of what he sees. It says there can be little or no doubt that the monuments are due to strangers from other parts whom accompany the Egyptians in their expeditions through these strangers, although these strangers may not have come further than from Palestine or from the hinterland of Syria. Now, they always talk about the mixed crowd. You'll hear the Hebrews talk about that. But this mixed crowd, that is being referred to is actually referred to again in Isaiah 19. When it said 5 nations will speak the language of Canaan. Now you got to remember, this is referring to a prophecy where Egypt would fall due to their disobedience, but they will fall and the great God Allah would raise them up, again. And this is for those who often deal with our Hebrew family that don't know no better, that go in opposition to ancient Egypt. In fact, it even tell them, do not abhor the Egyptians in the text, of the Piscean records. Abhor means have a deep hatred and so forth and so on. However, we know that's not the case in this new era in time because Egypt or Kemet is definitely the enemy of most of our family that don't know better. So if we go into the essence of what's being demonstrated here, and I want to do this right here real quick. Let's see, to show you exactly what I'm talking about when you hear me quoting this right here. We're gonna do this because we want our people to hear this and see exactly what Kemet, end up falling and how the great God Allah blessed him. It states here in 19, it says, the burden of Egypt, behold the Lord, let me open it up. It says, the Lord rideth upon a swift cloud and shall come into Egypt, and the idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence, and the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst of it. Now you got to remember, a lot of this has to do with the time after the Hyksos or the Hyksos had invaded Kemet. So the rulership wasn't the same as it was during the ancient time. Remember, it says a Pharaoh rose up who knew not Joseph. You see what I'm saying? Joseph, was most definitely one who laid a foundation and so forth and so on. But there was a Pharaoh who came up after him, and it speaks on this in the book of Yashahar. It goes deeper. It says, and I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, which means that at one time the Egyptians was united, right? And they shall fight every one against his brother, and every one against his neighbor, city against city, kingdom against kingdom. Now we do know how we went into slavery because we chose to serve gods in whom we know nothing, right? So we can apply this same measure to the ancient Kemites. Somewhere down the line, there was a deviation that took place that allowed this to happen. And it says it here, it says, and the spirit of Egypt shall fail in the midst thereof, which means that at one time the spirit of Egypt was flourishing. It says, and I will destroy the counsel thereof, and they shall seek to the idols, which mean at one time they wasn't worshiping idols, but they gonna seek idols, basically, and to the charmers, and to them that have familiar spirits, and to the wizards. So they gonna seek idols, charmers, and familiar spirits and wizards, other than what it was they originally demonstrated. Now remember, Akhnuk, Tehudi, Enoch was the first teacher that was sent to these people prior to Moses or anybody else, Joseph and all of them. So it says, and the Egyptians will I give over into the hand of a cruel Lord, which means Prior to that, they hadn't been under a cruel leadership. He said, and a fierce king shall rule over them. And these became known as the foreign kings, the Hyksos, saith the Lord of hosts, right? And the water shall fail from the sea, and the river shall be washed and dried up. It's talking about the Nile. But it says, and they shall turn the rivers far away, and the brooks of the fence shall be emptied and dried up, the reeds and flags shall wither. We already know the symbol of the reeds and the flag. You'll see them in a little bit later. The reeds often were a symbol of Sekhet Aru, what is called, the fields of peace. This is actually the dwelling place, that became known as that in which Ra had went into, and it was known as Allah. You see, we talked about this before. It said the flag shall wither. The flag is a symbol that represents the neter in ancient Kemet. You see? So this standard or banner that represented a flag that was a symbolic measure of God, and these reeds as a symbolic measure of dealing with a heaven state, the concept of this will become withered away, right? Under this chastisement, so to speak. The paper reeds by the brooks, by the mouth of the brooks, and everything shown by the brooks shall wither, be driven away, and be no more. The fishes also shall mourn, and all they that cast angle into the brooks shall lame it, and they that spread nets upon the water shall languish. Moreover, they that work in fine flax, and they that weave networks shall be confounded. Now, all of these things represented economy in ancient Kemet family. So this is a mean chastisement right here, for whatever it was that was done. But it says, and they shall be broken in the purposes thereof. All that make sluices and ponds for fish. Surely the princes of Zone. And for those who don't know what Zone is, this is the city of On, which is also synonymous with that of Heliopolis and so forth and so on. Right? It say, surely the princes of Zone are fools, the counsels of the wise. Counselors of Pharaoh is become brutish. How say ye unto Pharaoh, I am the son of the wise, the son of the ancient kings? So they would go into this special state, and we would see this really happen under the fact that these foreign king that came in to rule over them comes in and usurps the authority and begin to implement different aspects of worship here, and they come with their own interpretation of what these things represent, which mean they don't represent what they originally represented to the original Kemites, right? This is what Moses was dealing with during his time. He wasn't dealing with the original Kemites. He was dealing with the Hyksos because they came in first under the name Amu. You see, we use Amu Tamahu, which actually means the original troglodyte nigger. This is according to science. Now, I ain't make this stuff up. And if I show you what the original troglodyte nigger is, they're going to show you the concept of a European evolving from an ape. This ain't nothing I created. I'm just telling you what it is, if you look it up, So it would be brutish people that would become rulers. And think about that. Somebody that rules with no mercy, with an animalistic impulse, so to speak. That definitely sound like somebody that has went into a state of their passions. But it says, where are they? Where are thy wise men? And let them tell thee now, and let them know what the Lord of hosts hath proposed upon Egypt. The princes of Zone, it says, are become fools. The princes of North, you see, are deceived. It says, and they have also seduced Egypt, even they that are the stay of the tribes thereof. It says, the Lord hath mingled a perverse spirit in the midst thereof, which means that this spirit wasn't there before. And they have caused Egypt to err in every work thereof as a drunken man staggered in his vomit. Neither shall there be any work for Egypt, which the head or tail branch rush may do. In that day shall Egypt be like unto a woman, and it shall be afraid and fear because of the shaking of the hand of the Lord of hosts, which he shaketh over it. And the land of Judah shall be a terror unto Egypt. Everyone that maketh mention thereof shall be afraid in himself because of the counsel of the Lord of hosts, which he hath determined against it. In that day shall 5 cities in the land of Egypt speak the language of Canaan, and swear to the Lord of hosts, and one shall be called the city of destruction. You heard me quoting this a couple of times about this special demonstration dealing with 5 cities in the land of Egypt speaking the language of Canaan, right? We just showed you what the language of Canaan is. It's actually a language that evolved, out of the stay of the Canaanites in that special area. That's why they call it Proto-Canaanite, Proto-Sinaitic. You see, and it is from this language that the Europeans in this modern time again created hieroglyphics. So it says, in that day shall there be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt, and a pillar at the border thereof to the Lord. That's the pyramid and the obelisk. You see? And it shall be for a sign and for a witness unto the Lord of hosts in the land of Egypt, for they shall cry unto the Lord because of the oppressors. Now, this is something that is best kept secret. Many people don't know that the Egyptians, again, were being oppressed along with the Israelites because they were being oppressed under foreign rulers, the Hyksos, the Amahu. You see, we already see the great God Allah say he was going to allow them to come in. But the key is they would cry to the Most High too because of the oppressors. So the Egyptians were oppressed just as much as the Hebrews. Now the Hebrews in the modern time produce a doctrine where they is so much in opposition to Kemet because they say Kemet oppressed them. But many of them fail to realize that Kemet was being oppressed too. The Hyksos had both of them under bondage. All you got to do is read the history of Manetho, the history that the Jews kept out of the translation because they didn't want to promote the truth, because it made them look like they were the ones that were actually demonstrating the oppression, because there's certain measures where it actually equate the Hyksos or the Hykakasut with, certain groups of the Hebrews. But that's a whole nother message. It says, and he shall send them a savior. Now this is a savior being sent to Egypt, a great one, and he shall deliver them. I always say that savior was really Prophet Noble Drew Ali. He was sent into Kemet. He was recognized as the last living pharaoh. Now, some Europeans will tell you this was Alexander the Greek. You know what I mean? I choose my prophet over Alexander the Greek any day. This was the savior. Definitely wasn't Moses, because Moses wasn't sent to the Egyptians. He was sent to the Israelites. See, a lot of people don't know this right here in the Piscean records, right? It says, and the Lord shall be known to Egypt, right? When he sent them this savior. It said, the Egyptians shall know the Lord in that day. A lot of our Hebrew family tell you that, Egyptians are heathens. They don't worship the Most High God, but it's telling you here, and it shall be for a sign and for a witness unto the Lord of hosts in the land of Egypt, for they shall cry unto the Lord because of their oppressions. Now, he shall send them a savior, a great one. He shall deliver them, and the Lord shall be known to Egypt, and the Egyptians shall know the Lord in that day, and shall do sacrifice and oblation. Yeah, they shall vow a vow unto the Lord and perform it. And it says, and the Lord shall smite Egypt, and he shall smite and heal it. See, they don't talk about this part here. They tell you how Egypt was corrupt, Egypt was wicked, but they don't tell you that the Most High smited them and healed Egypt. It says, and they shall return even to the Lord. It's talking about Kemet now, not the Israelites. And he shall be entreated of them and shall heal them. In that day, there shall be a highway out of Egypt to Assyria. And the Assyrian shall come into Egypt, and the Egyptian into Assyria, and the Egyptians shall serve with the Assyrians. Now this makes it all plain why we see the language, which is Phoenician, which is connected to the Assyrian language, why we see this type of language written on those monuments that we seen earlier. You know, the Egyptian monuments that have that language written on it. It all makes sense when you read it in that context. And it says, in that day shall Israel be the third with Egypt. Wait a minute. I thought Israel was supposed to be the chosen. Well, they are. But they were considered the third with Egypt in this particular case. And with Assyria, even a blessing in the midst of the land. And it says, whom the Lord of hosts shall bless, saying, blessed be Egypt, my people. Again, Egypt, my people, Egypt, my people. For those who like to teach, you know, that God, you know, is wrathful toward Egypt. He healed them from being smitten, and he called them his people, and Assyria the work of his hands, and Israel his inheritance. And Israel is third mentioned here, just as it stated. Israel would be third with Egypt. Egypt was mentioned first and being called my people. Now, there are other measures in here that deal with the Sabians and all of that, you know, and the people that were known as Ethiopians, and talked about the descendants being taken into bondage with their buttocks being exposed, men, in other words, being butt naked, put on ships and enslaved. We can see how that history comes all the way up into this special time in relation to dealing with our people, but that's a whole nother lesson. But my key is Isaiah 19 shows you, you know, how Egypt was smitten yet healed. So I'm gonna go back to this special drawing over here and read again in context, okay, what was being stated. Now notice that Gardenia has spoken of again. He spoke of there can be little or no doubt that the monuments are due to strangers from other parts who accompanied the Egyptians in their expeditions. Though these strangers may not have come farther than the Palestine or from the hinterland of Syria, we can see the connection of what was being stated in regards to dealing with the Syrians here. We can see the connection of the Israelites being present among the Egyptians here. That's what he really alluded to. Then he says, were the new inscriptions indigenous, they would undoubtedly have been more numerous than they are. Nor should we have expected to find them in the temple or in the neighborhood of a mine. To turn to the inscription themselves, they are not in Egyptian hieroglyphic. Watch what he says. Yet many of the signs are obviously borrowed from that source. There we go. There we go. And that's why I keep telling you, even though the signs of Proto-Sinaitic and Proto-Canaanite come from the hieroglyphic, they are not considered the Medu and hieroglyphic in that sense. It says, there are the human head, the ox head, which I showed you a few minutes ago, the human eye, the very signs, and you notice he putting the Hebrew alphabets on the side of some of these demonstrations, the box Hebrew, the very signs postulated by Lenormand. It says, as the originals of Proto-Sinaitic Rosh, Aleph, and Ayin, there is the zigzag. That's the water symbol. It says, which we are sorely tempted to connect with Mem, water. You see, he letting you know that he created that concept of connecting that symbol to Mem, the water. This was his aspect, dealing with the determinants. There's one instance, right, of a hand, number 349, which might be Yod, the fish, and snake, recalling the fish and the snake are alternative candidates for the value. And then it's showing you Nuz and Nahas. Finally, there are some other signs which have Egyptian analogies. Then it's showing you here certain symbols. It says, but which cannot as yet be identified with the letters of Proto-Semitic alphabet. The trend of my argument now is clear. Have we not in this unknown script something strangely like the long sought Proto-Semitic script? Looking closer, we discern signs foreign to the Egyptian hieroglyphs, but answering well to the names or forms of Proto-Semitic letters. Such are, and this is like the cross-like symbol, precisely similar to Semitic. It says for tau, or the mark or cross, very common in the inscriptions, corresponding to the frequency of this particular letter in Semitic as an inflectual element. So you see they connecting these measures. You see the bet, the house, and Sabian may be compared with forms of Lam, which run through all the different alphabets. It says might be equated to the Semitic forms of Zayin. It says, without having much faith in them, I have added to my table of comparisons the Phoenician, Sabian, and Semitic. So you can see this drawing that is demonstrated here. It says, in comparing the forms of some of the individual picture signs with their earlier Semitic equivalents, we can hardly fail to be struck with the ease with which the transition from the one to the other could be effected. The comparison may be left to the reader in cases of the ox head, the human head, and the water sign. But in the case of the human eye, it is worth pointing out that the necessary step of the omission of the pupil has already been accomplished on the statute 346. The inscriptions are too fragmentary for any various serious attempts at consecutive reading. There's, however, one sequence of 4 letters that recurs 5, if not 6 times, as the following facet smiles show. You know, and basically, family, what it is showing you, it says here too, in figure 10, proto-Sinaitic signs used in the running text and for purposes of comparison to Phoenician and Old South Arabian. And you've seen some of those in the charts already from myself. So in this particular measure, it basically goes into a lot of the comparisons and shows you, you know, how this same drawing was adopted in order for them to create, you know, their concept, you know, of making these demonstrations alphabets as they did, and so forth and so on. Now we know before Champollion, there were others who came on the manifest, you know, such as Ibn Washia, Dhul Nun, Ibn Muslimi. These ones had said to be readers of the hieroglyphics and so forth and so on. We have the chart of Ibn Washia here. Yeah, you can see even in this chart right here, the concepts of the alphabet. They go to Canaanite demonstration right there again. See, they compare them to the pictorial script, the Grecian so-called. You know, man, them people been pulling the wool over the masses for years. This is terrible. They actually have a side-by-side comparison of what I was talking about before when I spoke on this, you know, being the actual alphabet and this being the pictorial script in relation to that, where they wrote in the same way. You know, that's the more ancient aspects of it. So that's where they came up with the same concept, you know, of figuring and saying, okay, well, we can demonstrate the hieroglyphics the same way because they had already connected the hieratic letters, you know, to the same type of demonstration. So, and that's what you have up here. Again, I showed you a few minutes ago. See it here, ancient Phoenician, then you got your hieratic letters that are connected. So if you connect the hieratic letters to this, if you go up and you create a whole nother chart and you begin to connect, where's that alphabet chart I had up here earlier? I think it's down here at the bottom. Okay. Yeah, this one right here. If you connect the hieratic, you know, to symbols, then you see how they was able to create the symbols again alongside the hieratic and do the same thing that they seen being done with the Proto-Sinaitic and the Paleo-Hebrew. So all of this goes into the methodologies that were applied to the way the European chooses to read hieroglyphics. The only problem with this is that most of the signs of Allen Gardiner that he have, some of those signs come from the Egypt-Ptolemaic era. They didn't exist during ancient Kemet. So if these signs came into existence, you got to look at the temples. So some of the temples in ancient Kemet were built by the Ptolemies. They were not built by the ancient Kemites or the ancient Egyptians. And so quite natural Ptolemaic hieroglyphics will be in those temples, and you will be able to read them the way Champollion, later put them out there, because he is drawing from the Ptolemaic expression of Ptolemy creating his own system, because we know that when Ptolemy went into Egypt, he had native Egyptians basically putting his name on monuments. You see, so that's a whole nother story. We already went through that and told you about how one was took off the count. So here was an attempt long before Champollion, of Dual Noon, not Dual Noon, but Ibn Washir. This is an Arab, centuries before Champollion. He had already dealt with the Medu. So Champollion wasn't the first individual doing this. In fact, Champollion even banked off of the methodology of Ibn Washir in order to come forth with his so-called demonstration. You see the Arabic measures here, where one was doing a comparative drawing here. And Dual Noon, again, who was known as the father of Sufism, was also said to have been a master in this language. We have come into a great understanding of the Egyptian language because we've proven that the alphabetical writing didn't have anything to do with symbols, but it had to do everything with alphabet, and the symbols are metaphysical. And that brings us into the concept of the symbols. As we already established, we said that signs and symbols are for conscious mind and men of understanding. We went over this lesson in the past and we gave examples on how we demonstrate this the Moorish way. The meaning of silence and the wisdom of Allah and man. And we always understood here that notice it said, fear not, lift the sacred board and the tables of law are in the ark concealed. Take them and read them well, for they contain all the precepts that man will ever need. And in the ark, the magic wand, for they contain all prophecy lies waiting for your hands. It is the key to all hidden meaning of the present, future, and past. The cherubim have guarded them well for every soul, this treasure box, and whosoever will may enter and find his own. So this is letting you know that everything that deal with the precepts of law, they are within the ark of a covenant concealed within us. You see, prophecy lies waiting for the mind, which is symbolic to the hand, right? Hand symbolic to the mind. The key of the meanings of things past, present, and future. See, this is where one is able to listen to that silent voice of God that speak within. The wisdom of Allah and man. That's the real aspect of Medu. Going into a state of silence and meditating upon the book of creation. You see, metaphysics. And then it said here, even in this particular drawing, we went through this, but we revisited. The master said the Logos will give heed to what I say. No man can enter into the light until he has found himself. Well, how will he find himself? Go forth and search till you have found your soul and then return. Well, how will he do this? The guide led Yehoshua to a room in which the light was faint and mellow, like the light of the early dawn. The chamber walls were marked with mystic signs, with hieroglyphs and sacred texts. Remember now, Yehoshua didn't have, a hieratic dictionary anything like that Demotic dictionary. And this ain't even dealing with the Demotic. This is dealing with more pictorial expressions, what he's dealing with. He didn't have a hieroglyphic dictionary, definitely didn't have E. Wallace Budge dictionary. This is what, 2,000 years ago. This is before Champollion. You see, the chamber walls were marked with mystic signs and with hieroglyphs and sacred texts. And in the chamber, Yehoshua found himself alone, where he remained for many days. He read the sacred texts and thought out the meanings of the hieroglyphs and sought the import of the master's charge to find himself. A revelation came and he got acquainted with his soul, and he found himself, and he was not alone. That's a powerful demonstration, because if this was 2,000 years ago, this is before Champollion deciphered the hieroglyphs. You know, when you go into this aspect right here, this is powerful. This is very powerful, because when one is told to go find themselves, you know, like Yehoshua was told to find himself by the master teacher, the herein, and this had to do with him deciphering the symbols that he had been placed in the chamber within that room. Well, we can say, all right, well, the soul is synonymous with what we call the Ka. So he was told to go within himself, listen to the silent voice that speak within the language of God, and decipher and translate everything that he's seen outside of him, because really it is within him. You see? Now, it says here, the Logos waited 7 days and then was taken to the hall of fame, a chamber rich in furnishings, lighted up with gold and silver lamps. The colors of its ceiling decorations, furnishing and walls were blue and gold. Its shelves were filled with books of masterminds. The paintings and statues were the works of the highest art. And Yehoshua was entranced with all this elegance and these manifests of thought. So that's what these symbols are. Everything in creation is a thought of Allah made manifest. Everything that you look at around you, the sun, the moon, the stars, you know, every part of the kingdom, animal, plant, mineral, beast, you know, every aspect of creation are thoughts of the great God made manifest. But they are deeper drawings that relate to creation other than a cow just being a cow. Well, what is the nature of the cow? You know, what is the nature of the bull? What is the nature, you know, of the serpent? You know, what is the nature of these things in creation? You know, what is the sacred geometry connected to them? You know, what is the internal meaning of these things and how we can draw off of reading the book of creation? We're looking at living metaneta around us. See, we have to impress this in the consciousness to read, you know, the metaneta the Moorish way. Because again, wasn't no Champollion here with his so-called decipherment. This had happened already before his time. Yehoshua didn't have what he had. So this actually corresponds to all of the scholars, though, that had taught on these particular symbols, because they taught that they were not an alphabet. They were meant to be understood metaphysically. They were meant to be understood in a more symbolic and allegorical form. This is what the whole teaching on the language was before Champollion came on later with his so-called Rosetta decipherment that our people eat up now. And they were dealing with competition. So they had to come up with something to make it look like they was outdoing, you know, each other, so to speak. And that's where your so-called decipherment comes from. But it says, in all the land, there was no place more grandly furnished than the beauty parlors of the temple of the sun. Few students entered these rooms. The priests guarded them with awe and called them halls of the mysteries. You see, we can see all these measures coming forth from our Moorish Holy Quran, by the way. That's what we're trying to show you. You see, here's another one. The senior course of study was now open. And Yehoshua entered and became a pupil of the herein. Now, for those who don't know, a hierophant is one who teaches reveals secrets, basically. Those things that were considered secret, sacred, a hierophant is able to bring those things forth and they interpretate them along the lines of dealing with an esoteric exegesis. But it says that he learned the secrets of the mystic lore of Egypt land, the mysteries of the life and death of the world beyond the circle of the sun. You can study all of these things if you bear witness to the Medu or the hieroglyphics. You can learn about the mystic lore of Egypt land. You can learn about the mysteries of life and death and of the world beyond the circle of the sun if you contemplate that frame, if you contemplate everything in creation, everything in existence, if you can see the metaphysics and the science that is backing these special drawings, you can see the formulas and have the ability to not only heal self, but raise the vibration, of this present day era, And it goes on, he hath endowed thee with reason to maintain thy dominion. He hath fitted for thee with language to improve thy society and exalted thy mind with the powers of meditation, to contemplate and adore his inimitable perfections. That's what you're doing. You contemplate, the inimitable perfection part of self. And when you contemplate this, this is the reading of the Medu. In other words, you're able to see beyond, what has become manifest and see the original thought that the Creator had manifested. You see, again, it says, weak and ignorant as thou art, O man, humble as thou oughtest to be, O child of the dust. Wouldst thou raise thy thoughts to infinite wisdom? Wouldst thou see omnipotence displayed before thee? Contemplate thy frame. So when you look at the Medu, that's what you bear witness to. Again, the thoughts of Allah made manifest, you're bearing witness to omnipotence that has been displayed before you. So again, what then is the definition and the nature of those things that you bear witness to according to divine exegesis? This is the key, to being able to deal with transliteration and so forth and so on. You see? So, these are powerful drawings, Morris King. These are very powerful drawings that we have. And we have sent this out to the Moors. So everything that you see here is basically, you already have it in your possession, and we gave some examples. We gave some grand examples, on how we were able to accomplish, in the past, certain measures of being able to get, the essence out of these demonstrations. And we actually put it up here and showing you just by tracing the root of the word. This is one way of being able to bear witness to certain measures. We showed you the connection between the word kepra, kepri, and the word bara and bareshet and bara. This is in what they would call Hebrew and they would call it Arabic, but I call it Moabic Canaanite and Mudaric Arabic, because the original Arabic is Mudar, you see? And so the definition of both of these words meant to create something from nothing. And again, we have shown our family in the past that, one is dealing with the cause and one is dealing with the effect. However, we was able to draw this measure by connecting through sound shifting and all of that right there. Even though you don't have the K, H, and the E and so forth on it, you have the last portion of it, bari, which connects to the word pari because P is interchangeable with B. We already know this. You see, so he who is self-created is what they have given as far as interpretation for this word. So when we vet it, and we vetted by these two languages, what's called Hebrew and what's called Arabic, Moabic Canaanite and Mudaric Arabic, we found both has to do with to create something for nothing. So we see the connection of this word bara to kepra, right? So this is being able to identify certain, the same thing we did right here with the term tara. which he who commenced creation into being as the giver of life. Dara, atom, seed, offspring, progeny, children. This is the Hebrew or the Arabic or the Mudaric Arabic in the Moabic Canaanite. Seed, semen, offspring, descendants, posterity, and children. Now this, this is coming from what we would call Egyptian dictionary. This is coming from Arabic dictionary. This is from Hebrew dictionary. But all of the definitions are pretty much cohesive. Remember, this is the cause. He who commenced creation into being as the giver of life. Well, these represent the effect. So the definition that you often find in Hebrew and Arabic, they represent the effect definition, the definition that gives the effect of the cause. And the cause, he who commenced creation into being. In these particular definitions, says the atom, the seed, the offspring. So that's what's manifest after, there's a creation of things in the, manifest. So we see the atom is the first to evolve out of space, as far as dealing with being a building block of creation. The seed and the offspring and progeny of children, we can see that this is like the seed that is planted within the womb, which is also connected, to a certain degree to the same process in which the atom comes into the darkness of the universe. That seed goes into the darkness of the womb and evolves, just like the atom goes into the darkness of space and evolves, you see? So this is a scientific measure here, going way deeper than just the definition that has been given, and we can see this here. You see, then we see in the Arabic seed, semen, offspring, descendants, posterity, children, same thing. But then we go into the actual expression of it here in Medu, we can actually see this being expression. We know Tar represents the creator. You see, we often like to compare this twisted rope, so to speak, to the DNA double helix, which is actually a connection to DNA. There's DNA in the universe. DNA is within us as well. We already know this. The name of the creator is even attached to DNA. But notice you see a square for materialism, and we see what I would call like a symbolic rising of a sun in this semicircle right here. So we can see that Ta as creator, right, has called forth his offspring into creation and manifestation that they may rise, you see, into existence. This is the way that I'm just demonstrating off the head dealing with meta. We can get deeper than this in the metaphysical aspect. That's just Ta. But then you have Ra. They may rise like the sun. You see? Often you will see the Uraeus on the crown of those in ancient Kemet, but see the dot in the middle of the circle? That's a symbol of creation coming into being. That's a universal symbol of that. So this Ta, Ra, is Dara, Zara, Zara. You see the connection between all of them? It's not by chance, family. These are the processes by which we will go through and manifest certain things, because there are certain words that go all the way across the board, just like the word katem in ancient Kemet, that actually deal with seal bearer, seal keepers, and so forth and so on. But this is the same word that's used in the Arabic when we talk about katam nabiyin, seal of the prophets. Well, it's kutum in the Hebrew language. It's the connection. It's a triad in the connection that we're dealing with. We're dealing with, a pyramidal drawing here. Ta is at the pinnacle in this drawing, Bada and Bati, right? But what's the definition of Ta? Again, he who commenced creation and being as the grand master architect, right? Then this says in Moabic Canaanite, Mudaric Arabic, to begin, to commence, to invent, to start. You see? See how these definitions really correspond? This again being the cause And these definitions are giving you the effect that come forth, because surely one who commits creation into being as Grand Master Architect is the one to begin, to commence, to invent, and to start. You see? Ta. See the connection of da to da, di, da, you know? So that's sound shifting measures. So these are certain drawings that we wanted to bring forth to our Moorish kin. Now, I have another drawing here. Hold up. It wasn't that one there. Wasn't that one. Okay. Oh, there you go, right there. That brings me to this area here when it comes to being able to read. Now, here's the drawing dealing with the Egyptian grammar and the sign lists that we find. And these are basically, all Egyptologists use Allen Gardenia's sign lists. And they basically use this sign list and then saying, okay, there's a group that deal with men, a group that deal with animals, plants, anthropomorphic beings, you know, which is like the god, demigods, and so forth and so on. So he categorized them and put them in certain areas. But these are his definitions for these. Some of these things can be accepted. Some of them have to be accepted with a grain of salt. You know, for example, we obviously see here, and we have come across this one a couple of times, dealing with the Asiatics, you know, dealing with people, the Remet. We see the way that he had placed this here, and that's the full definition that one is given. He has a man in front of a woman, you know, really demonstrating the mudra right there. We'll get into that too. You see one with a man with a hand to the mouth, right? These are not alphabets. These are what they like to call determinants. We call them indicators. So man sitting on his heel. That's obvious. We can accept that. Man with arms raised, right? You know, man hiding behind the wall. All of these things that he is given is all good and well. You know, but there's a deeper interpretation to these things that Gardenia didn't go into. You see? Why does this man have his own raise? In ancient Kemet, this represented a symbol of praising. You see? One sitting on the hill, this represented a sense of one basically coming forth in honor or humility in the presence of the ruler. You see? He said here, man hide behind the wall. I would have to say that's not so clear here. That's his interpretation of this symbol. You know, but in time, one can do their research and come into a better understanding of that. Because purposely, I see, you know, not one hiding behind a wall per se, you know, but I could see this as, you know, a whole different demonstration. But that's the way he depicted it at that time. This here says a man receiving purification here. You know, a man sinking into the ground from fatigue. That's his interpretation of that. I don't see that as a man sinking in the ground from fatigue. I see that as a gesture, you know, of one demonstrating rites, ceremonies, and forms. You see? Again, a man performing, you know, what he called the Hindu rite. You see? So all of these are really mudras in different expressions. Man steadying the basket. We can see that right there in the way man holding an oar. You know, that still doesn't give you the inner meaning of those things. So the key is when you contemplate, first you got to be identifying what you're looking at. And once you are able to identify what you're looking at, then you can take it upon yourself to see the metaphysical meaning of that special thing. You see how it connects. Oh, this is often a measure that's plainly seen. Okay, we see one with the bow, with arrows in their hand. You know, we can see this as one demonstrating the archer degree. But what can we apply to one demonstrating, you know, being an archer in a relation to that in metaphysics? You know, man with his arms tied behind his back. They say man with blood streaming from his head. You know, that's his interpretation of that. I don't believe that's a man streaming with blood from his head, but you know, that's what they saying. You know, so I don't mind coming forth correcting these demonstrations. You know, some of our people that have accepted these things as they are and have read things or tried to transliterate things based upon this system, of course they're going to push back against us when we bringing this to them, because they have accepted this as the way, because it's a systematic way for them understanding, but they don't know what we know. You know what I mean? Man falling, you know, I don't look at that as a man falling. Look like to me somebody turned the hieroglyphic horizontal, you know, but that's another measure too. Man bowing down, you know, he could be picking something up. You know, as far as I'm saying, a child sitting on lap with hand in the mouth. So all of these measures, I don't have to really go through all of them for you to see them. You know, and then he comes into them and gives certain definitions based upon these things, you know, and what they mean to him. But there are greater drawings that relate to these things beyond what you see here and what's being stated. Notice again, he categorized them. See, woman in her occupation, you see all these dealing with women, determinatives, as they would say, anthropomorphic deities. You know, so these would represent the gods here, you know, is going through here, you know, so we can go by that. But what about looking at these things and then reflecting upon creation ourselves and going into the true meaning of this? So this Medu is really directing us to study creation is what I'm getting at. Medu direct us to study creation, to basically look at the things that are around you. You know, pay attention to creation, because this is what the Kemites did. Okay, now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna read this measure here from this drawing, because we got plenty of time, and I'm gonna come back to these things later in our next drawings and classes. But I want to come from the book Egyptian Hieroglyph and Metaphysical Language by our brother Mustafa Gadala, and just touch a few things before I open up the floor. In this particular work of brother Mustafa Gadala, in chapter 2, he states the scientific metaphysical realities of pictorial images. Then he says 2.1 images, language of the mind, consciousness, divine. We're always talking about thoughts of Allah manifested. We've seen that in the way that we demonstrated from a Moorish perspective. As human beings, we say to each other, picture this. Can you imagine? Do you see my point? The use of such words as picture, imagine, see my point are deep reflections of how our minds process information that reaches us through our senses. We process all incoming information through images. Linguistic communication consists of the transmission of immaterial ideas or concepts from one person, speaker or writer, to another. Hearer, listener, by means of material signs, such as marks on paper or vibrations of the airwaves. In reading a text, we undertake a process of vision, whereby material signs are translated into concepts in our brains. The traditional interpretation of communication purports to treat the material sign as the mere appearance of an underlying ideal, reality. When communication is interpreted in this way, the interplay of signs is not treated as a reality in its own right. Rather, the sign is taken as the signifier, indicator, or appearance of a signified essential reality which underlies it. This reality is the conceptual content, which is somehow held in the brain of the communicating person. This apparent modern thinking was known not only to the ancient Egyptians, as we check the text of the Shabaka stele that dates only to 700 BCE, but linguistic, theological, and other evidence is conclusive in support of its derivation from an original text at least more than 2,000 years earlier. Section 55 of this Egyptian document reads, "The sight of the eyes, hearing of the ears, and smelling the air by the nose, they report to the heart. It is this which causes every completed concept to come forth, and it is the tongue that announces what the heart thinks. The senses report to the heart. With this report material, the heart conceives and releases thought, which the tongue as a herald puts into effective utterance." So the heart in ancient Egypt symbolizes the consciousness. As such, the information channeled via the 5 powers of sensation are brought to the faculty of the imagination, whose physical dwelling place is the frontal lobe of the brain. You know, the brother goes further into this, but I don't want to tarry long in that particular area because it's telling you that, you know, where the images come forth and they are impressed upon one's mind, the frontal lobe is where you have the third eye. But then when you go to chapter 3, it gets more interesting. The brother states Egyptian hieroglyphic imagery, depiction of the thoughts. And this is what we're getting at. Ideograms of ideas, images as metaphysical symbols. It is worth repeating Plotinus, description of how the Egyptians came up with their pictographic hieroglyphic ideograms. Plotinus wrote in the Enneads, volumes 5 and 6, "The wise men of Egypt, either by scientific or innate knowledge, and when they wished to signify something wisely, did not use the forms of letters, which follow the order of words and prepositions and immediate sounds and enunciations of philosophical statements, but by drawing images and inscribing in their temples one particular image of each particular thing. They manifested the non-discursiveness of the intelligible world. That is, that every image is a kind of knowledge and wisdom and is a subject of statements altogether in one, and not discourse or deliberation, but only afterwards others discovered, starting from it in its concentrated unity, a representation in something else already unfolded and speaking it discursively and giving the reasons why things are like this. So that because what has come into existence is so beautifully disposed, if anyone knows how to admire it, he expresses his admiration of how this wisdom, which does not itself possess the reasons why substance is as it is, gives them to the things which are made according to it. This is basically telling you what one is able to do by means of observation as opposed to dealing with alphabets. So one is able to observe a thing and have grand meaning, just like when we look at, for example, our Grand National Seal. It has a meaning behind it. Simultaneously, we don't need an alphabet to break down the symbol of the circle 7. Though we express the meaning of it in words, there's a meaning that's expressed outside of speaking or spoken words. Same thing dealing with our flag and our symbol and so forth and so on. You understand them for what they represent. This is because we know the nature of what these things represent. But if you do research and you study, you come with a more extensive knowledge of what they represent. As we see, you know, the connection of our flag and how it goes all the way back to what you call it, you know, the Mesquite, you know, at the very beginning in creation and so forth and so on. We can go many directions with it, you know, but we understand all of this based on the further research that we have done. So in all actuality, it's the same thing when we deal with these different symbols that have been expressed as Medu. You got to remember, these things are real things that exist around us today. We can see everything expressed in Medu Netta demonstrated right now in this new era in time. Right around us in imagery, everything, life living. So the ancient Kemites basically recorded their lives in stone. You see, and that's what we are drawing from. So what is the metaphysics behind it? You would have to deal with whatever symbol it is that you're looking at. You see, to determine the metaphysics behind what you're looking at. You see? So that's a whole nother drawing in and of itself. And a lot of time they depict this beside what they call cursive hieroglyphs, you know, but really they are no more than dealing with a burial of the hieratic. So really you would transliterate or transcribe these things into hieratic as we showed before, because these are nothing more than markers. That's all hieroglyphics are, the way the European created them. You know, cursive hieroglyphics is basically the same thing, but wrote in the stickman form. So when you see these things on the wall in ancient Kemet, transliterate them into the hieratic, put them in their proper context. But then there's a deeper meaning when you see, you know, these actual determinatives that's being stated there in this special depiction that's being depicted. When you look at certain things. So it went on, it says, in this Egyptian meta language, it says both the signifier and the signified of the sign dissolve by use of the sign that ultimately represent extra linguistic signified concepts or signified reality. The linguistic sign unites not a thing and a name, but a concept. The link would be between one hand, the physiological, and this is very a psychological part and self-entity in case of concept, and on the other hand, a material entity. As it is above, so it is below. It says the contrast is at once between the subjective and the objective, the ideal and the material, and the private and the social. Egyptians never differentiated between the sacred and the mundane, two sides of the same coin. Images of each other, always aware of maintaining this relationship between above and below, vice versa. Egyptian hieroglyphic ideograms are formed in accordance with natural laws. The character of the Egyptian written sign inheres in this natural capacity to recreate processes. Ideograms may be defined as pictures intended to represent either things or thoughts. There are two kinds of ideograms, which are the pictures or actual representation of objects. To copy is merely to reflect something already there, inherent. Through imitation, we enlarge nature itself and become nature, or we discover in ourselves nature's active part. Pictorial symbols, number 2, which are used to suggest abstract ideas. Imitation through imagination means creating art objects to be set beside the natural objects of the world. The method of artistic creation and the shape of the object created are specifically human realizations of the universal creative forces present in nature. It is the force of the imagination through which we can feel ourselves related sympathetically to the larger latent force of the cosmos. In creating new objects with the aid of imagination, the mystic does not desert reality by constructing things alien and unnatural. Imagination does not tamper with the world, but moves it in accordance with nature. So, you know, this demonstration goes into many different aspects of where, you know, he spoke of the wealth of knowledge in the Egyptian pictorial formations and man depiction and signifying the universe, animal symbolism. You know, he went into basically a measure somewhat similar to the list that Gardenia had given. So in all of this, after everything was said and done, when you begin to go into this work, the brother Mustafa Gadala did a good job on understanding the metaphysical significance of the animal images. And he gave many of them here. We encourage our family who have this work to study these things, you know, go deeper into the depths of it. For example, you know, rather than just looking at certain symbols as a determinative and a sign that's given, the brother has metaphysical breakdowns on these things. And he was not the first to do this. A lot of this stuff he actually drew from sources that came before him. You know, like it gave a definition, for example, of, you know, the baboon. You know, it said it represents the crucial moment that precedes the awakening of the sun. It emits the crackling sound and the crack of dawn and the beginning, and it represents this point of beginning extremely well. The baboon represents the starting point of a cycle, being a creation cycle or daily cycle. You know, and then he went into, as such, he is associated with Tehuti, the divine intermediary between the metaphysical darkness before dusk and the physical, let's say, as the daylight. You know, he went into that aspect. He went into the measure dealing with the baby chick. And, you know, obvious that the baby chick represents a new beginning. You know what I mean? Certain measures on how one is given definition. We hear the story, our brother like to talk about chick. Yeah, we understand how Moorish American Muslim come into the knowledge of self. You know, so there's a beginning stage everywhere. You heard the brother chairman talk about that in what you read in the book of fire. You know, in the beginning. Well, the beginning is symbolized by certain expressions in the meta. You see? Okay, the bee. You know, the bee is often seen, even in Masonic symbolism, they try to say, well, this is the worker bee, and they work in colonies and all this type of stuff here, trying to break their own symbolism down behind the symbol. Where in Kemet, you know, this bee, it says its various attributes are related to the bee. Specific attribute deals with that which is determined by the context. Some related attributes deal with the solar significance. The symbol of fecund bounty of the natural world, pollination, honey making, its benefits for food and medicine and work. You can find whole drawings just out of this knowledge yourself, family, if you do deeper research. In other words, to study, again, transliterate Medu is nothing more than studying creation. And if we study creation well, we will be able to come up with methods and methodologies to heal ourselves. That's a scientific drawing. You know? So when we come into this special aspect, and you see him quote here, and I'm going to go to this document in a second to show you more. We're going to send this out to you. Also, the beetle. We just showed you the scarab beetle, you know, and the definition that we found in the way we demonstrate. Let's see what our brother has here. He says the scarab or dung beetle is one of the 75 manifestations of the creation process, all being aspects of Re, the divine creative force. Sounds similar, right? Then he says Horopalo Nieales explains the symbolism of the scarab in this way. To signify the only begotten of birth or a father of the world, man, they Egyptians draw a scarab. The only begotten because this animal is self-begotten, unborn of the female. For its birth takes place only in the following way. When male wishes to have offspring, it takes some cow dung and makes a round ball of it, very much in the shape of the world, rolling it with its hind legs from east to west. It faces the east. And so as east gives it the shape of the world, for the world is born from east to west. The scarab beetle is therefore always found at the beginning of a cycle. Re is frequently expressed or represented as a large black scarab beetle, sitting in the solar boat, rolling the sun disk, or as a man whose human head is replaced by a scarab beetle. As such, Re is the original divine scarab. The Egyptian name for the scarab beetle was Khepri, word meaning this who brings or comes into being. See, this goes back to what I was just showing you earlier when I was just looking at the words. You see, it says, Re is described in Unas, the funerary pyramid text. They caused thee to come into being as Re in the name of Khepri. As such, the beetle relates to the solar principle. So, you know, it goes on to dealing with the birds and everything that, you need to know this is a good foundation and a basis to build your metaphysical consciousness to be able to begin to read the book of creation. You know, this Egyptian hieroglyph metaphysical language here. And it gets deeper than this. You know, I just wanted to point that out. Let me show you what he was referring to earlier as well. So yeah, we can take Gardenia's, we can take his sayings for determinatives, but some of those things we really have to vet and look a little deeper into. But some of them don't check out as he said they are. So this book, this is the book on Horapollo here. And this was way before Champona. Actually, this was even translated from what they like to call the Greek, which we know is really Hecapta. This is the text of Horapollo. And in this text, which a lot of this stuff that Mustafa Gadala is drawing from, he's drawing from a lot of these works of Horapollo. And he has his own breakdown as well, but you know, he's definitely showing that this was the way it was demonstrated. See here in this, like for example, how they denote eternity. And notice it's given
more.
Okay, Islam.
Pardon yourself. If you have your screen up, we can't see it.
Okay, let me stop it again. For some reason, it don't let me do that. Okay, I'm gonna just go to the document itself. All right, there we go. Islam. Is it up?
Gratitude. Now? We see it. Gratitude.
Okay, gratitude. Islam. So again, here's a depiction in the document dealing with Horapollo. Like I said, I'm gonna send this out to the Moors so they can do their own vetting of this demonstration. This was before the Europeans began to try to bring it forth as they bring it forth now. You see? And notice it says, to denote eternity, they depict the sun and the moon because their elements are eternal. But when they would represent eternity, it says differently. They delineate, it say a serpent with its tail covered by the rest of its body. Then it goes into the Egyptians call this the Oreus. It say, which in the Greek language signifies the basilisk. And they place golden figures of it round the gods. The Egyptians say that eternity is represented by this animal. If you ever seen the serpent consuming its tail, you can look at where they got that from. It says, because of the three existing species of serpents, the others are mortal, but this alone is immortal. And because it destroys any other animal by merely breathing upon it, even without biting, and hence inasmuch it is thus appears to have power over life and death. And they place it upon the head of the gods. That's a powerful demonstration. And you've seen that in all of the crowns that they have. Here again, you have, you know, again, the serpent. They have many drawings here, family, you know, when they represented the year. So this is given different drawings. And this is all before Gardenia came up with his sign list. They're letting you know what these things represent. You know, and this document alongside Mustafa Gadala's book will give ones a greater metaphysical understanding, you know, of what these things represent. You know, and you will be able to identify these things when you see them, what they mean. You see? We know who Heru is. So Heru and Hathor, you know, and they're saying that this actually is where they got the Aries and Aphrodite concept. They drawed it from Heru and Hathor, you know, delineating two hawks. You know, so I mean, it's a whole work right here, you know, to go through this special drawing, family. You know, I'm just showing how these things were seen. And this is what Mustafa Gadala was quoting from, dealing with the Kefu, or what we call the begotten, you know, and this is dealing with the beetle and bringing things into existence. So we'll get this to the family. You see the Greek right there, as they like to call it, you know, but we call it Hecapta. You see that right next to it. you know, and this goes throughout the whole document. There's a concise breakdown of all of these things, you know, that goes deeper than looking at them as just determinatives. You see? So let me stop sharing here, and we'll go into this further when we go into our measures. We're just trying to familiarize our people with being able to understand these things from the Moorish standpoint, like Yehoshua did when he went into the chambers and he was told to contemplate upon these things. So we are told to contemplate, therefore, upon creation. Listen to that silent voice of the great God Allah when you pay attention to the birds, whatever bird it may be it a hawk, be it an eagle, you know, be it a blue jay, a jaybird, whatever you're looking at, you know what I mean? Or just anything that you see around you, the grass, vegetation, you know, everything out there in cosmology, you know, this is true meta. And if you get caught up in the Eurocentric aspect of the way that they teach it, you will miss all of this wisdom out there, that glory, as our brother Bruce Lee had told a brother one time. You know, I like that demonstration. One was told, he was talking, and he said, "Don't think." He slapped him on the head and say, "Feel." You know, he said, because if you get caught up basically in, you know, certain measures, you won't be able to see all this glory out here, you know. And so that's the key. We want to be able to see the manifestation of the language of God as it expressed through the thought in us and creation as a whole. That's the basis of understanding Medu. You know, we already know how to transliterate hieratic text and all that right there, but we're talking about getting into the metaphysics that relate to the very science of life. We are being directed to study life. That's the purpose of the Medu. So that being said, Moors, we ain't gonna hold you longer. This is our first drawing in regards to dealing with Medu, falsely called hieroglyphics. And we're gonna open up the floor right now to our Grand National Secretary of the State so that she can give a drawing, and we'll go through all of our Moorish kin. Islam.
Islam, Islam, Islam. Gratitude. Islam Moorish kin, first of all, I want to rise, giving all praises to our Father God Allah, giving honor to our Prophet, Noble Drew Ali, the last prophet in these days and times, giving honor to our Georgia consulate for providing a forum, to our Consul General of Georgia, National Assistant Grand Chairman, Dr. Torre Anu Rasul Simpson Bay, for opening our meeting according to law. Also to our Consul General of Texas, Dr. Edwards Bay, and giving honor to all of our Moorish kin online, to Act One, and to you, Dr. Shadow Menti and Mohamed Shepsuel. This has been such a grand class. There were so many paradigm shifts for myself. When you were speaking about first dealing with Medu, then taking us back to the original script, taking us back to Iberian Peninsula, Atlantis, and I could just see the prophet's words in Act 6, where it speaks about the northwestern and southwestern shores. The language itself dealing with the language of God, and how the various references that you brought forth coming out of the Quran, where the prophet tells us the importance of not only meditation, but contemplation, you know, and being able to pay attention not only to identifying what the symbols are, but also what is the nature of the special symbol. When I looked at the drawing that you brought forth coming from Isaiah chapter 19, and not only the Israelites, but the Kemites themselves were under that foreign king, Amu, you know, and you could see the pieces of the puzzle coming together when it comes down to what we were indoctrinated with as a people, dealing with the remix and the train of thought that they wanted the NBC, or the direction of where they wanted the NBC to go in mindset. And the other point that you brought forth so beautifully, when our National Grand Mufti speaks about we are today what our ancient forefathers yesterday were without doubt or contradiction. And I just thought about the 6th and 7th senses of intuition and telepathy, that in order for us to be able to contemplate and go back in mind and read from the book of Allah's remembrance, we are that same spirit. So once we get rid of the remix or what Rome would have us believe, then we are able to, without blockages, the chains of fetters, go back in mind, as the prophet stated, in the land of fleshless things, and mind never does forget. So, I just wanted to give you much honor for tying all of these things for Dr. Shaheed. Is just a wider or more infinite resource as far as us being able to go back with what we already have and do even further or deeper study so that we can come forth with even grander and more eloquent measures, which in essence, is basically dealing with that circle or that 360 degrees, which is our star, the 5 pentagrams. So this has just been a grand measure, Dr. Shaheed. I want to give much gratitude and honor to you because of the way that you took us from the various languages dealing with demotic, Hikapta, and hieratic, and now bringing us to the metaphysical aspect of it, where we've had some kind of foundation, but just a hookup in reference to now we can see the intermixture, or we can see the grand demonstration of how the languages evolved. But we know it came from one source, which is our people, So much gratitude to you more for this grand demonstration. Love it. Always charged up, ready to do more research, and much peace and love to all of my Moorish kin online. Peace and love.
Islam, Grand National Secretary of the State. That's a powerful measure and very powerful. It don't get no plainer than that. And what I want to do is just, for example, this is, can you see that Grand National Secretary of the State?
Yes, sir.
I would ask you, right, just from your perspective, well, we know this is Anpu right here, right? We know that this is expression of the Hierophant, we can see a lot of things going on in here. If you were to see a drawing here metaphysically, what do you see going on in this picture here, sister?
You're speaking about that first picture of Anpu?
Yeah, just the whole episode of what you see going on as far as what you can identify with. What do you see there, Grand National Secretary of the State?
Okay.
This is just identifying what you
No problem.
Islam.
I'm looking at that staff where both are sharing that common bond. I'm looking at rebirth or reincarnation because of what Anpu represents. Also dealing with judgment. I'm looking at Mayat, dealing with the balancing as far as truth, right order, harmony. Let's see. I see, I'm looking at the Hierophant within because they're eye to eye, they're not on, one is higher than the other. So all truth is one. Also, looking at it in reference to chapter 1, where the prophet speaks about how we all tarry many ages until all of our lessons are learned. That's the circle that you spoke about. We know that the hand is symbolic of the mind, that uniting of Asia. I see the Ankh in the hand, which is dealing with life, bringing forth life. These lessons are life-giving. I see at the bottom where you have what looks like male and female at the foot of these special lessons. So I can also see the future guidance of the nation being at the feet of this special wisdom. You gave a powerful demonstration in reference to the auric layers, you know, so I'm also looking at the auric layers that coexist between these two worlds, which is in essence one, because all things are one. All things come from Allah, and all things will go back to Allah. So I see the circle, you know, I see creative fate. I'm just basically staying in chapter 1, but that's my measure right there. And in essence, we are the Lord of, you know, our special soul and also this plane of things made manifest. But the essence of it is the God within. Islam.
Islam. See, that's what I'm talking about right there. That's what I'm talking about right there. You know, and so when you deal with that special drawing, you know, that's how simple it is. You know, just having the knowledge, you able to express that. And when we go deeper into reading everything in creation, we only increase that knowledge. You know, that's a powerful measure, Grand National Secretary of State. We just wanted to demonstrate that, you know, this is not something that necessarily has to be taught, but it has to be with our degrees of what we had along the way that allow us to be able to manifest whatever we manifest according to our exegesis. You know what I mean? So the more we know, as we say, the more we grow. Islam, and we give honor to you, sis, for that grand adept interpretation. Praise be to Allah. Islamism without the skills. And see, we're going to show you that our Moorish kin already know it. You know what I mean? Grand National Secretary say it's in her. It ain't on her. It's in her. Islam. Well, all right. Well, let me see. Is Sister Alseta Moon L on the manifest? Okay. All is well. All is well. All right. Well, we're going to call forth, is the brother Torre Anu Rasul Simpson Bay on the manifest? Yeah, there you go, right there.
It's on. I think your brother, he's not there now. He
okay.
He put in the chat something, you know.
Okay, it's
says
long.
that his family have to run to errands. Sahida have made the host. Long and peace. That's the last thing I said.
Okay, Islam. Praise be to Allah. Islamism. Islamism. Well, all right. Well, we're going to open up the floor to our other executive rulers on the manifest. And all right. Any of our Moorish kin would like to come forth and give their drawing? It ain't but a few of us on here.
Islam.
All right, Sister Akurta Bay, Islam goddess and queen.
Islam. Dr. Dendra Nia Akurta Bay. First, let me rise and give praises to the great God Allah. I give honors to our holy prophet, Noble Jurali. I give honors to Act 1, and I give honors to Georgia Consulate and everybody who's involved in getting this information out this morning. And I give special honors to you, National Assistant Grand Chief, for this wonderful, wonderful class. As always, I sit in awe, just looking at how you take us, how you, and like the Grand National Secretary of State said, how you took us from basically from the beginning and then just walked us through, bam, 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 just walked us through, and all those different alphabets that you showed us. Some of them I recognized and some of them I didn't, because but when you took us back, and that was so great to take us back, because you made me go back and remember. I had to go back and remember what you had said about different things in those different charts and stuff. You had showed us, because I remember I even tried to give a measure of one of them, couldn't hardly pronounce the name and nothing like that. But that was great that you took us back and you brought us all the way back up to where we are now, and how you just showed us, how, oh man, how they just covered up everything. And then the reading from Mustafa Guatala, the reading that you did from his book. I know you say chapter 2, but I didn't get all of the pages, but I'm quite sure. Definitely got to go back and listen to the playback. Such a grand measures, and even how you pointed out how they tried to turn us against ourselves. Even when you pointed out about the Egyptians, how they tried to make it like we were the bad ones, and it brought me back to when I was in the Piscean era. We never, once we discovered that Jesus wasn't real, we just couldn't figure out why. You got the story in the Bible where it talks about Abraham went to the Pharaoh, and Abraham lied about Sarah being his sister and all that mess. But God punished the Pharaoh. I never could figure that out. Why? The Abraham is the one that lied. I mean, that Abraham, what they gave us, how they taught it to us, that Abraham lied, and yet God punished the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh he apologized and said he didn't, why didn't you tell me that was your wife? And my mind just went back to so much, and I just got so much out of this, and looking forward to continue to do my research and just go deeper into this thing. I tell you, like the God has said, man, I'm having fun. It's a lot. It's a lot. My little brain is just on fire right now with everything you give us. Thank the great God Allah for the playbacks, because for me, I have to listen and listen and listen, and I hear y'all say that I have to use that hammer repetition because I pick it up better when I hear it over and over and over. So this was just a grand class, and like I say, that what stood out to me too, how the Egyptians was in bondage, and you talked about the Hepsus and seeing. I got to do some more research on them and all that. It's just so much that we touched on when I was in the church. We touched on it, but because we didn't have the teachings of my prophet, because it takes some more to teach you more, we just couldn't put our fingers on it. We just couldn't touch it. And we knew it was something else there, but we just couldn't figure it out. But hey, we figured it out now, because look where we are. I'm in this Moorish American government where my prophet intended for me to be all along. So gratitude, God, man, for letting me share. Wonderful class, wonderful class. Peace and love.
And gratitude, Sister Curta Bay. Don't go yet. I wanted to get your drawing on a measure too, sis.
Uh-oh.
You're all right. You're all right. I just want to get what you see here. Like our Grand National Secretary of the State demonstrated. If you were to describe this, just dealing with the figures here, you ain't got to worry about all the other artwork around them. Just the figures. What do you see being depicted here?
Okay, and I'm still learning. Okay, who is that particular figure right there? Is this here a moon over here? This is a sun. Who are those two?
Well, actually, you can see Al-Sar being depicted here. You also see someone that is wearing, the white crown of Kemet. This is definitely Al-Sar, and that's Heru, and that's just a goddess. Okay. So what if I'm looking at that, just right off the top of my head, I would say the goddess. She's giving honor and glory to the God at that time. She on her path, she's I see her with her hands up,
And I see that as being referenced to them. And looking at also, it depicts to me that she's on a path. And I see Heru standing back there too. And you say that could be a Sa. She's on that path. She's on that journey. And like gotta say, the bottom line, all of this is going on within me. But she's on this journey. And they are leading her. She's coming to them. I think that's what I see. Islam.
Islam, beautiful, beautiful demonstration, very powerful. I like that. You know, and this is just being able to exercise the thought, because you see, you contemplating upon the symbols. You know, Yehoshua had a little more time. You know, I know I'm putting the Moorish kid on
the spot.
You know what I mean? But that's a good job, though. We could see that, you know, exactly the way you expressed it. You know, holding the hand up in homage and, you know, on the path. You know, and they are basically there, and then, you know, Heru is standing there awaiting. Yeah, it's a powerful demonstration. Gratitude, goddess and queen, for that drawing. You made it plain. You know, and one can only really expand their knowledge in this, and it really goes into studying, you know, the different expressions. We know the hand is symbolic to the mind.
Yeah.
We can say the thoughts were exalted. You know what I mean?
That's
you see
right.
the steps, your power, this insight was not given for thyself, but for the purpose of the ruling of the people. You know, and then we see the crown, the white crown of Upper Kemet. You know, we see a key, a life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We can see this one being met halfway by those who await them.
Right.
The means of unfoldment. Yeah, that's a powerful demonstration. Also in Heru. You know, perhaps it can even be an expression, you know, of her God man, you know, who is backed by the power of Asa and Heru, you know, and teaching her and guiding her and leading her into that path. So, right. I mean, yeah, that's powerful. Islam.
Gratitude.
Gratitude. Peace and love.
Peace and love.
All right. Islam. Is there any other more that would like to come forth and demonstrate their portion?
Islam.
Islam, Dr. Marvin Edwards Bay. What have you to say, grand man?
Gratitude, God, man, for calling me. Yeah, this is really a very powerful demonstration you put on this morning. And, you know, as you were, you know what I mean, as you were going through your measures, I was getting really kind of excited, because this is where, you know, man, I really wanted to get to. You know what I mean? To be able to understand what our forefathers put forth. I mean, they put forth this stuff. I mean, this communication, I put like this here, you know what I mean, in the stones to last forever. You know what I mean? So that those that come behind them, you know what I mean, can gather the knowledge. You know what I mean? They can gather the understanding. And you really, which I think we should be put in the hot seat, so to speak, so that we can, you know, like chick throw us off that mountain, and so that we can use them wings. You know what I mean? Those big wings to float, to fly. You know what I mean? And that's the only way we're gonna do it. You know what I mean? Because, you know, when the prophet said we won't do anything unless at the point of the sword, so to speak. You know what I mean? It's not no sword at us now, but, you know, we get prepared, because, I mean, you know, you just making it plain. I mean, and I love the way you brought us up to date. You know what I mean? To show us those different writings or alphabets. You know what I mean? And how they make sense, because we saw them alongside the ones that we were studying. You know what I mean? Along the with the demotic and the hieratic. You know what I mean? But we never did go into those like the Sabian and the Nation. You know what I mean? We didn't really go into a thorough understanding it. And then this is because we weren't prepared at the time. You know what I mean? And I can see that you have, you know, opened our minds, you know what I mean, to be able to perceive now, you know what I mean, to accept these teachings, you know, and the show. And really what came to my mind is when you brought on where the Hyksos came in, you know what I mean? And you talked about how the Israelites were there, the Egyptians were there, and I think it's the Hebrews, you know, and you know, and it just kind of like really brought about a greater understanding to me to what exactly happened. What did we do? I mean, but you know, I could see it like when the Hyksos came in and took over, you know, that Egypt that was being put to the rise was really us after we had been taken over, and we followed those teachings. You know what I mean? Like I said, those that were put out of the Garden of Eden and those that follow their teachings. You know what I mean? And so this is what's happening today. You know what I mean? We didn't initiate it, so to speak. I mean, we may have, but at this time we are, because we go steady going along with it. You know what I mean? And so the great God had to send someone, you know what I mean, a prophet, you know what I mean, such as, well, not such as, the prophet, Noble Drew Ali, to bring us out of it, because they had confounded the truth. You know what I mean? Compounded the truth, you know? And I mean, it's just a beautiful day because, you know, I mean, we're coming into these lessons. I mean, because you did, you know, your studying. I mean, you know, I mean, we needed a guide. I mean, you've already gone through and studied to the depth that you can reach back and bring us along. You know what I mean? I say gratitude. You know what I mean? And we appreciate you for all that you do. And it just, you know, excite me and kind of wake me up more. You know what I mean? To let me know that this is what I got to do. You know what I mean? This says something, you know, this sits on a higher plane of my studying now. You know, I mean, everything else is coming to this point. You know what I mean? And so I just want to say gratitude for all you do. So this is where I'm at, you know. All right. So gratitude, God, man. Islam and peace. Yes, you want to say?
Yes,
okay.
sir. And gratitude. Yeah, I got a drawing too for you, brother, before you go.
Right. I figured as much, so
oh, yeah,
I'm ready.
Yeah. What you see going on here, brother? And I put this up here for a reason.
Okay.
It's a real yeah.
See, God and the goddess sitting at a table. And they're, it looks like they're eating. I mean, they're partaking in or studying something, you know what I mean, that's on this table. You know, we got a lot of signs and symbols all around them, you know, depicting a path that has brought them to this point. You know, they got writings on the wall up there where they are. You know what I mean? They're taking everything in. Yeah, I see them dressed in white. You know what I mean? Which is purity. I mean that they, you know, in order to perceive what it is that they need to perceive, their minds have to be pure. I mean, we have to purify our minds so that we can contemplate, so that we can actually absorb what is being presented. And that's, I mean, you know, like that's basically what I see at this point without further guidance. I'll put it like that.
Islam. But yeah, we can definitely see some measures up here. Look like they got some fruit cocktails up there. But and that's on the table that's in front. But there's another measure being demonstrated right here, you know, that actually they are playing chess.
You know, I thought about that, but I didn't think they had chess back then.
yeah. See, and basically that's where they got it from. You know what I mean? So you see, they got the chess up there. They got the white and they got the red. So yeah, they were actually playing chess, and we can find the Moors demonstrating the same thing. and later expressions. So it's a God man and God woman demonstrating chess. And chess is said to be a game that allows one to become more strategic, you know, strategizing and being able to exercise their wisdom more than anything. So
so that's where they're studying.
That's right. That's right. You know, they exercising thought, so to speak.
Right.
So yeah, it's a powerful measure. You know, every time I move, you move. That's what we would say over here with the guys under the tree.
Yes, sir. I couldn't make out what was that demonstration like, you know, beyond the chest table.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. I said, look like they got some fruit cocktails up there. You know,
okay.
You know,
all right.
But you know, the main measure is you gave a grand insight. Though we just wanted to see, you know, what one could draw from it. You see what I'm saying? And
yes,
the more familiar we become, you know, with certain measures, you know, in this thing is the more that we will be able to identify with being able to deal with, you know, bringing these measures into clarity, so to speak. So we're gonna definitely direct the course in a little minute with our homework. So Islam. Okay, is there any other more gratitude, Brother Marvin Evans Bay? Is there any other more that would like to come forth with a drawing in relation to dealing with what it is that we have brought forth today? Understanding the metaphysics of the Medu. Islam?
Islam?
Yes, sir, Brother Tar Ra'anpu. Anibati Bay. Go ahead, brother.
Islam. One, I always enjoy the thinking of the metaphysical aspect of it. One being because it takes you beyond, it always takes you beyond your flesh, and that's a form of meditation. When you're sitting there and you're actually pondering what these symbols mean, you know, and a lot of times when they were even when they were going through their like when Noble Ali got led or went through the Sphinx Paw or came out through the Sphinx Paw, when he was in there, you're meditating on that. So that's a form of getting in tune with your intuition and telepathy that kind of like them pictures that you had previously shown about some of them. A lot of them I took as they were calling into their ancestral wisdom, to the ones that went before him for the guidance. And so I like how we went through, especially with the explanation of the of Ta, how the transition of even the Ta went into the body and the Bada and then the Badi, how it translated into from the T to the B, and then just even going, just thinking about some of the past ones, the transition of the words and how we got all the way to this point. And I will have to also bring the class that you did last night with the I can't remember the term you used, but it's like the axiotonal lines. And this is all in reference to yourself. All this stuff has to do with yourself. It don't have nothing to do with nobody else. And we've been taught all wrong, when all we have to do is just look within. You know what I'm saying? That's why I enjoy about the metaphysical aspect, the thinking about the you know what I'm saying, the creations, that the creator that we have within us, even the pictures of Anubis is taking the waste and turn it into something worth the substance. You know what I'm saying? And that's it's just I enjoy it. I just enjoy all this and everything, even with the languages and stuff like that, because it does bring light to what we, you know what I'm saying, everybody else playing guessing work when there's real work going on right here for our face and our government for free. With that, I'll leave it to coming piece as well.
Islam, don't leave yet, brother. Praise be to Allah, but we give honors to you for the measure. What do you see here, my brother, in this scene?
I'm seeing that this is like, I'm seeing that this is a kind of like, if you look at the figures before, above, like they're sitting in on a ceremony or kind of like I would say a ritual. If you're looking at the ones in the white down below, they are there, and when the weighing of the heart, they're weighing the heart. One is calling, I guess, summoning. It looked like kind of like a flute, or I want to say like an oboe, if that's what that thing with the reed and it has the long trunk to it. Like there's a calling. They're summoning or raising the ether vibrations, because we know that the vibrations, that's something that they used back in the day too. I don't know who the figurine that is on the left side of the balance. So we know we're dealing with Mayat, the weighing of the heart. See if it's as light as a feather, and the weighing of the heart. So much to say is the weighing of the deeds, and that's what I see from there.
Islam, grand draw, and that's a powerful measure. And if you really look at it, you can also see the concept of them being below on the mundane plane, and going into that which is beyond that plane. You see the gods, awaiting, so to speak, the offering of this new soul that may be coming amongst it, so to speak, after one has been properly weighed. We see Apep, they're ready to devour if one is not pure of heart. So this is a powerful demonstration. These ones coming in are waiting their particular time to go and have themselves weighed as well. So yeah, I can see all of that, grand man. That's a powerful drawing, and in context, when you see all of that, it also makes everything else all the more plain. Oh yeah, before I go out of that too, by the way, when you see a lot of this stuff around the scenery, a lot of these inscriptions are what are known as cursive hieroglyphs. We know hieroglyphs, and cursive hieroglyphs are nothing more, than an expression that is used in most cases to cover up the hieratic. So if one transliterate, the hieratic from transcribing these symbols back into the hieratic, they will most likely come in contact with the papyri that this scenery relates to. And it pretty much, as we can see, it definitely has to do with something that deal with taking one from the plane of things made manifest, into the exalted realms. I just want to bring that on the manifest. We give honors to your brother Bati Bey for that powerful measure. All right. Islamism without the schism. All right, Islam. Is there any other more who would like to come forth, with a drawing? All right, Islamism.
Islam, I did have another question. I didn't get it asked.
Yeah, go ahead, brother.
If we got a moment, I know you got other things to do. It was like, if I can recall it correctly, during the time, like you was talking about, like the Tower of Babel. We know that all of the language came from one. You know what I mean? Then that was a point in time, and it seemed like you was actually showing us where the point in time when it became all mixed, all different. Was that what you was actually showing us at that time when it broke down into the different expressions of the language? Does that make any sense?
Well, basically, the key was, in this case, just showing you how the European came up with their creation of hieroglyphs being an alphabet, and they really adopted that from the Proto-Sinaitic, Proto-Canaanite strip. And also showing that there was original alphabet, that was put on the side of that pictorial script of Proto-Sinaitic and Canaanite, that actually basically was a part of the languages that was on the manifest before many languages or people created other languages, so to speak. I was showing where that came from and how it manifested. So it wasn't really dealing with, the order of, how different languages came to be in the aspect of putting things out there that way, but more likely showing you where the European came up with their concept of bringing the language forth the way that they did, and showing you how this was based on original language, So that was my drawing with that. Islam.
Islam and gratitude.
Yes, sir. Islam and gratitude, grand man. Praise be to Allah. All right. All right. Are there any other Moors who would like to come forth before we take this demonstration in the third heaven? Well, all right. Going once. Going twice. You are indeed thrice blessed. So want to give honors to all the Moors who came forth and exercised their fire, because we're going to go deep into this measure. This is just a foundational drawing. We're going to get deep into the science. We're going to go further into certain measures that our Moors can get even grander drawings. And we'll send everything out in our homework assignment as we normally do. And we just say gratitude, Moors. And man, this is just a powerful demonstration. There's still much wisdom to be learned by the Moors. All right, Sister Curta Bay. Islam.
Islam, Islam, Islam. January 15, 1929. A warning from the prophet to be read at every meeting. I hereby inform all citizens that they must end all radical, agitating speeches while at work, in their homes or on the streets. We are for peace and not destruction. Stop flashing your cards at the Europeans. It causes confusion. Remember, your card is for your salvation. Failure to obey these orders will be a severe consequence. We are for love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. Any citizen or group of citizens who hold malicious feelings toward the government or the prophet or violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement will receive their reward from Allah for their unjust deeds. All true Moors will and must obey the law as laid down to them by their prophet. If they lose confidence in their prophet, they should turn in their card and button, cease wearing their turban and fez, and return to the state where I, the prophet, found you. This is a holy and divine movement founded by the prophet, Noble Drew Ali. And if the prophet is not right, the government is not right. The prophet, therefore, is sending out the divine plea to all Moorish Americans that they do their part in protecting their prophet and the government. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet through the will of Allah to redeem his people from their sinful ways by the order of Prophet Noble Drew Ali. A holy covenant of the Asiatic nations. Ye are the children of one father, provided for by his care, and the breast of one mother have given you suck. Let the bonds of affection, therefore, unite thee with thy brothers, that peace and happiness may dwell in thy father's house. And when ye separate in the world, remember the relation that bindeth you to love and unity, and prefer not a stranger before thy own blood. If thy brother is in adversity, assist him. If thy sister is in trouble, forsake her not. So shall the fortune of thy father contribute to the support of his whole race, and his care be continued to you all in your love to each other. Islam, Islam, Islam. This meeting is officially adjourned according to Act 2. Go in peace, Moors. Great class. Islam.
Islam.
Peace, Morris Ken.
Islam family.
Great class.
Great
Gratitude.
peace and love.
Praise Allah.
Islam
Great
is
class.
Islam.
Great class.
Gratitude, Dr. Shahid. We
Great
appreciate you
class.
more.
Love you, Morris.
Love.
Love you.
Yes, Islamism without the skit.
Love you, Morris Ken.
Yeah, love you, Moors. Don't forget about Sunday school.
Peace and love.
Peace and love.
Peace and love.